On March 19, 2015, it was announced that Joel Manby would become the new CEO of SeaWorld Entertainment. Manby was previously the CEO of Hershend Enterprises, the largest family-owned amusement park company in the United States. The charismatic Manby had a proven track record in the theme park industry, and was even somewhat of a public figure after appearing on the CBS reality show Undercover Boss. Manby faced a great challenge when he took the helm at SeaWorld. The corporation's portfolio consisted of 6 parks: Busch Gardens Williamsburg, Busch Gardens Tampa, Sesame Place in Pennsylvania, and 3 SeaWorld branded amusement parks: the original SeaWorld San Diego, which opened in 1964, SeaWorld Orlando, which opened in 1973, and SeaWorld San Antonio, which opened in 1988. It was no secret why the position of CEO was vacant, as for the past 2 years, SeaWorld had been in crisis mode. In 2013, the documentary Blackfish premiered. The film was a scathing look at the treatment of captive orcas, specifically those held and bred at SeaWorld amusement parks. By the end of 2013, the documentary was airing regularly on CNN, and activists, government officials, and the general public as a whole were putting overwhelming pressure on SeaWorld to end their signature orca program. Manby assumed the position of CEO at the height of this crisis. Up to this point, SeaWorld's main response to the outcry had been to attack the documentary, the filmmakers, and the interviewees. But this only made matters worse, so the company pivoted to improving the living conditions of its orcas. In August of 2014, SeaWorld had announced an initiative titled the Blue World Project, that if approved would almost double the size of the orca tanks at SeaWorld San Diego, and subsequently in San Antonio and Orlando. When Manby joined the company, this project was still awaiting approval by the California Coastal Commission, which had jurisdiction over construction projects in the California Coastal Zone, which included SeaWorld San Diego, which sits in San Diego's Mission Bay. Just over 6 months after Manby joined SeaWorld, the commission approved the Blue World Project, but only on the condition that SeaWorld stop breeding and transferring orcas, effectively forcing them to end their orca program entirely once the park's current orcas passed. SeaWorld planned to sue the Coastal Commission to have the conditions removed, but Manby was already taking SeaWorld in a new direction. The month after the commission's conditional approval, Manby held a conference call with investors in which he outlined a new vision for the company. Manby's plan was to shift focus away from animal shows and put resources into more traditional amusement park attractions with a nautical theme. In the call, Manby announced 3 new attractions, all themed after a single television show named Sea Rescue. Sea Rescue was a documentary series that followed a group of veterinarians and experts attempting to rescue and rehabilitate marine life. The first attraction based off of the show was a unique roller coaster named SeaWorld Rescue: The Ride, which would be constructed for SeaWorld San Antonio. Another was tentatively titled SeaWorld Rescue, and concept art depicted guests boarding a rescue truck and receiving unique views of an aquarium. This attraction was earmarked for SeaWorld Orlando. Finally, the third attraction would be a submarine ride named Ocean Explorer, to be built at SeaWorld San Diego. The Sea Rescue rides were multi-million-dollar attractions, and in order to pay for them, Manby explained that he was diverting money away from the Blue World Project. 4 months later, in March of 2016, Manby made the decision to end SeaWorld's orca breeding program. The following month, SeaWorld announced that the Blue World Project had officially been canceled, and as Manby had outlined, the money was instead invested in new attractions for SeaWorld's 3 parks. While the Sea Rescue truck ride for Orlando would be scrapped, SeaWorld San Antonio would receive its Sea Rescue attraction, a double-launch coaster now titled Wavebreaker: The Rescue Coaster. SeaWorld San Diego would also receive its submarine ride, but the company was now promising much more. In February of 2016, SeaWorld announced that a new 3-acre section, or a new realm as it was officially called, would be added to SeaWorld San Diego named Ocean Explorer. The children's area would feature aquariums, rides, and digital technologies, all focused on exploration and adventure, with a theme of ocean conservation. On top of some small flat-top rides, the area would feature a flagship attraction, named Submarine Quest. This was the realization of the attraction that Manby had announced months earlier in his conference call. The press release for the ride explained that, quote, guests would be adventurers on a global expedition of scientific exploration, traveling aboard submarines to see ocean explorers' remarkable undersea animals. Concept art of the area showed some of the marine life children would be able to interact with and torment incessantly with new creative glass placement. This concept art was either hastily made or sloppily made, or both, with some really poor compositing, as seen by the piece of concept art for Submarine Quest. While these seem to just be stock photos quickly placed inside a rendering of the submarine, the inclusion of this kid is perfect foreshadowing. Construction began in the summer of 2016, and the realm was scheduled to open in late spring of 2017. Ocean Explorer would be built just to the right of the park's entrance, on a relatively empty parcel next to one of the park's cafes. A flag display and a small animal viewing area would be removed to make way for the new realm. Concept art for the land was circulated as construction began, and it appeared that the area's signature attraction, despite the name Submarine Quest, would actually be
Okay, so thank you for pointing that out. My voice mod has been muted this entire time.
Disney's People Mover attraction and the High in the Sky Seuss trolley train ride at Universal Studios.
Was it muted on the other screen too?
Both of these attractions were gentle trips around their respective
And also, hello,
lands,
Luna.
providing guests a relaxing outdoor ride with some short dark ride portions.
Damn it.
For Submarine Quest, it was assumed that these dark ride portions would be more elaborate,
I'm
providing
such a
guests with
professional.
special views of the new aquarium during their adventure. In a statement, SeaWorld assured the public that Submarine
All I could
Quest
hear
would
was the
not be
video.
a
Rip.
shoot-'em-up style dark ride, even though no one considered that this was a possibility.
Sorry about
Instead,
that. I'm
the press release
so
explained that
scatterbrained
by,
right
quote,
now.
using digital touchscreens mounted in the ride vehicles, riders will play games and score points as they spot ocean creatures during the indoor and outdoor journey.
Why did
The
I have
company
that
launched
muted?
a significant media campaign
Oh,
to
well.
coincide with the release of the new realm. SeaWorld San Diego published a video series on
Yeah,
YouTube titled
These
Meet
are my
the Deep,
little.
in which
my
hosts
new
Mike
little
and Jenna
face.
chronicled the area and specifically Submarine
I was
Quest
wondering if
development
you knew,
and
but it's all good.
construction.
I
Meet
did
the Deep
not.
series
Thank you
is
for
quite
pointing it
possibly the
out.
most in-depth documentation of a ride's construction by a theme park. The web series explores almost every aspect of construction.
I should have
In the
looked
third
over and
episode,
seen that
Mike and
bright
Jenna
red
introduce
icon,
Brian
but I
Morrow,
didn't.
Vice President of Theme Park Experience Design. Brian shows off the model ride vehicle for Submarine Quest and explains the interactive elements that were being installed in the ride, noting the touchscreen game that would be the attraction's signature feature. Days after this Meet the Deep episode was published, the final ride vehicle model was revealed at the
I love the
International
little face on the
Association
PNG
of
so
Amusement
much.
Parks
I
and
know.
Attractions
It's
Expo
my
in
it's a little
2016,
gremlin.
and it was revealed in epic fashion. A trailer was also released during the expo with a new opening date of summer 2017.
Punch in your coordinates. Set a course for discovery.
Wait, hang on. Does this still work?
Dive into
It looks so much weirder like this. Anyway. I love the energy. Thank you. It's my true form. My true rascally form.
Ocean Explorer.
I am shaped like a
Whole new
friend, but
realm
I will
at
stab you in the
SeaWorld.
back.
In January of 2017, a Meet the Deep episode was published in which Brian gave a tour of Chance Rides in Wichita, Kansas.
Eventually
which was
I'll
the
actually
manufacturer
figure
of the
out how
attraction. They gave
VTuber
the
models
first
work.
glimpse of the full-scale sub still
But
in
for
production,
now, I'm just going to
complete with
create different
lighting and the
PNGs.
touchscreen game. The next episode featured Mike and Jenna actually playing this game. It was explained that the in-ride game would feature difficulty resistance, so that it was challenging for players of all ages. It was also revealed that there would be different levels of awards depending on how well the riders played. Also during this time, SeaWorld announced that a new roller coaster named Electric Eel would debut at SeaWorld San Diego in 2018.
I also forgot to mention I have a new raid
Throughout the spring
sound
of
alert.
2017,
Thanks
as
to
construction crews were putting the
Hayden
finishing
Maniac.
touches on the new land, Meet the Deep
I don't
walked the
know
site
his
several
last name.
times. In April, SeaWorld
My
held a
good
ceremony
friend
to
Hayden
unveil the
provided
final
me with
submarine to
a
park guests.
new raid sound effect. It's perfect nonetheless. Thank you.
The submarine remained on display as construction neared completion. Ocean Explorer and Submarine Quest had an impressive turnaround time. Despite being delayed from spring to summer of 2017, the new land was still set to debut just 16 months after being announced.
Have you gotten to
No
use it
one
yet?
seemed more
No,
excited for the
nobody's.
land to open than those internally
I haven't
at SeaWorld.
streamed very much, and
Executives
nobody's
the
really
ride's
rated me,
designers
so
hoped
I
that
haven't
enthusiasm would
gotten to
spread
use it.
guests. Tempting fate, SeaWorld San Diego president John Riley
Hold that
said,
thought.
quote, "Our guest response to new attractions has always been tremendously positive." On June 1st, 2017, Ocean Explorer held its grand opening ceremony. SeaWorld pulled out all of the stops for the event. There were ribbon wavers, confetti, flares, the eel from a discontinued ice show at Busch Gardens Tampa, and they even got a bubble guy. With the realm now open, dozens of guests who had waited minutes for the land's opening casually walked inside the new world of exploration, discovery, and conservation, by apparently immediately trampling the plants due to lack of fencing. Ocean Explorer featured 4 new kiddie rides: Sea Dragon Drop, the Octorock, Aqua Scout, and the most well-received, Tentacle Twirl.
Hold that thought. I'm going to be right back. In that time, I'm going to play it Ed. If I'm not back by then, I'm sorry. Hi, welcome back. I'm a professional. I had to take out some trash. Oh, excuse me. Whew. I ran back up the stairs so fast that I think I sprained my ankle. Is your ankle okay? Yeah, it's fine. It's just like if I put too much pressure on it, it just hurts. I don't think I sprained it. I think I just like stretched it wrong. But yeah, I'll be okay.
The aquariums throughout Ocean Explorer were quite small, but they did feature the unique viewing angles as promised. There was also an interactive attraction, the Skill Training Pod, as well as the Explorer's Cafe, whose signage choices were a bit confusing as everything else in the land is designed for small children, except for the craft beer apparently. The signature attraction was of course Submarine Quest. The ride vehicles could be seen as guests entered the land, making their way around the ride track. After hearing a year's worth of press
What do you
describing
mean?
the ride as an immersive and interactive
Some places like to
experience,
sell beer
many
to
guests were
children,
excited and curious
and you
about
can
what
eat.
the ride
You
had
can
in store.
drink a
Guests
beer.
entered the
You can have a.
attraction through the outdoor queue, with television screens
In the
featuring
UK,
a host
you can
named
have a drink
Sub-Commander Sparks,
and
giving the ride
have a
safety
meal.
spiel and introducing his
No, you can have a drink as long as you're having a meal. Yeah.
and the land's mascot.
I think at 13, 15. I don't know, but it's pretty young.
A figure of Link could also be found at the realm's entrance. After entering the loading station, guests passed by a few simple art pieces and immediately boarded their subs. There were 7 subs, each with a special name, with no clear direction or pattern. 2 of them are named after parts of a ship, axle and rudder. One of them is a fish with a first name, Macy Mackerel, and another is just a first name with a nautical adjective, Bubbly Bailey. As guests sat in
What?
the ride vehicle, Sub-Commander Sparks returned to instruct riders to pull down on their
Kids are
lap bar
stupid. They
before
won't
Link
understand our
joined him for
naming
the voyage.
conventions. Let's just
Sub-Commander
name them
Sparks
whatever.
told riders to tap the screen in order to release the airlock, and guests began their expedition into the majesty of the deep, blue, blinding sunlight.
Yay!
After passing by trees and concrete, guests entered the first show scene of Submarine Quest, which was that of a deep-sea coral reef. This scene is supposed to be in the Twilight Zone, a zone that is so deep below the surface that sunlight cannot reach it. Of course, the ride represents this in broad daylight with 2 screens that briefly display an
So
octopus.
bright!
That octopus was totally camouflaged.
After the Twilight Zone was the
Wow.
Sunlight Zone, where guests saw
Sounds so
eels.
patronizing.
Click faster.
Sub-Commander Sparks detects a large animal ahead, and guests begin a pursuit. Riders are able to see Link in front of them. This static figure featured a digital face that never quite synced up with the audio from the ride vehicle. The two decide to send out the Beacon Buddies on a mission.
Wow, look at this genuinely amazing experience that totally cannot be replicated.
The Beacon Buddies find huge jellyfish and something even bigger ahead. As guests escape to the
That
old
condescending
sea pod to take a
attitude
look,
is
riders
very
are
apparent.
instructed to open another hatch, despite the hatch always opening before the instruction audio is finished.
Open the hatch.
The sub then enters a sea pod full of screens that display a giant CGI squid. After a brief stop in the sea pod, riders open the
I love
escape
the
hatch and
underwater,
re-enter
not
the ocean,
underwater world.
just as the squid breaks the
Indeed.
glass on the sea pod and releases ink. As guests exit the pod, water sprays at riders. The water effect was incredibly inconsistent, and it is not clear whether the water was triggered by a game mechanism and only appeared sometimes, or if it was simply an unreliable effect. It was shot from the left of the ride vehicles, and instead of giving all of the riders a light mist, it just hosed the rider in the front left seat. After the scene, the subs take a final turn
I'm
back
just
into the
imagining
loading
you're just
station.
going on this
During
ride
short
with your
segment,
daughter
guests find out
or
what type of
whatever,
explorer they were.
and you're sitting
There
in
were
the
3
next seat,
options:
and you're
Junior
just like,
Explorer,
"Isn't this
Super
fun?"
Explorer, and Master Explorer. Even
Just
though
get
in play
hosed
testing,
down.
Mike scored Marine Veterinarian, which did not seem to be an option that made
That
it
would be
into
the
final
one
game.
time where I'd
Guests then
be
re-entered the
so
loading
happy
station
to see
and
someone
exited the
drowning
vehicles.
above water.
Incredibly, Submarine Quest was not a hit with guests, and this is putting it lightly.
No.
In general, guests were shocked to find out that Submarine Quest was neither sub nor marine. as it took place 15 feet above the ground in the open air. The
It's
outdoor
true.
show scenes were sparse, and the one dark ride scene was a disappointment. The ride did look better at night, as there was at least a chance of the illusion of being in the deep ocean, but sunset in the summer in San Diego is around 8 p.m., and most nights, SeaWorld closed at 9. The creative decisions made for the ride were quite confusing. Many guests speculated that the ride had its budget cut late in development, which could be possible, but concept art for the land did display the ride almost exactly as it was built. Supposedly, the initial
Did they not,
plans
like,
called for the
think
ride
of
track
dark
to be
rides?
longer and mostly enclosed in a tube. However, it seemed that a significant portion of the budget was put into research and development for the unique ride vehicle rather than putting that money towards show scenes. The designers clearly took a lot of pride in their work, and it seems as though this part of the experience was built more or less from the ground up, which is theoretically impressive. However, in practice, all that is noticeable is the inherent
girl's
and
face in the
consistent flaws
reflection
the mechanics
just
of the game, most obvious in the
mood.
confusion during the Beacon Buddies section, which was present all the way back during playtesting.
Tap the screen to deploy the beacon buddies.
Other criticisms included the screens being difficult to see in the sunlight and that the voice of Link was obnoxious. To add insult to injury, the entire realm had a branding problem, as seemingly everyone believed that Ocean Explorer was the name of the ride and not the name of the realm.
What the heck is this Ocean Explorer ride car?
So, Ocean Explorer is actually the name of the whole land.
Get GTA Online free on PS5.
Jesus.
On June 3rd, 2 days after the ride's debut, the San Diego Union
That was
Tribune
such
released
a
scathing review of the ride,
stark
saying, quote,
contrast
"The
to what
biggest
we were listening
disappointment is
to.
the heavily promoted submarine quest. SeaWorld is touting it as a high-tech trip through the ocean ecosystem, but it turns out to be a
But it's
slow-moving
not.
track ride past a few animated animals on video screens." Brady McDonald of the Orlando Sentinel said, quote, "The new land centerpiece ride is basically a slow-moving transportation system that doesn't take you anywhere and encourages you to ignore your surroundings." On August 8th, 2017, during
pretty much.
SeaWorld's Q2 earnings call, Manby stated that Ocean Explorer
God,
had
I
been a
know kids have a
disappointment.
very
He
strong
said, quote,
imagination,
"I
but
think the one
even
thing that
even
I'm
I
not
would have a
satisfied
hard
with
time
is
in that
Ocean
as a
Explorer.
kid.
We did not market this as well as I wanted to. It's completely designed for young children, and we need to make sure that's the case." A sign was quickly placed outside the attraction.
We didn't
clarifying that the
market
ride
this
was
as well as I
intended for
wanted
smaller
to.
guests,
Yeah, that's the
despite
problem.
initial marketing claiming it was for all ages. However, poor marketing and bad reviews would not be Submarine Quest's only problems, as technical issues plagued the attraction as well. The ride often had a
good.
significant wait, as only 2 to 3 subs were run at
I love
a
the
time,
SpongeBob
rather
aesthetic.
than the 7 the ride was capable of. This was only a problem when the ride was operating, which it frequently was not. Throughout the ride's debut summer, Submarine Quest was constantly closed for maintenance. By September, frequent guests noticed that the ride was barely ever open. One visitor noted that they had been 4 times since the ride's debut, and the attraction had been closed all 4 times. The ride operated intermittently throughout the summer of 2017, but was closed for most of the fall. It did reopen in December, and on December 30th, 2017, during the busy winter holiday, it accumulated a 130-minute wait time, baffling those that had already ridden the attraction. This
Holy
was one of
S.
the last days of operation for Submarine Quest. It is unclear if the ride operated in early January or when its true final day of operation was. But by mid-January 2018, a mere 7 months after opening, the doors to Submarine Quest were blocked off, leaving guests speculating on the future of the ride. On February 28, 2018, SeaWorld CEO Joel Manby resigned from his position at the company after less than 3 years as the chief executive. Falling attendance and steep quarterly losses were cited as the main reason for Manby's exit.
Can you
but
imagine the
multiple
kid who
publications were quick to mention the recent
whose
failure
like
of the
favorite
Submarine
ride at
Quest
SeaWorld
attraction.
is Submarine
While clearly
Quest?
not the main reason for his departure, the realm's failure could have been a contributing factor. Just 4 days later, it was announced that Chief Creative Officer Anthony Esparza and Vice President of Theme Park Experience Design, Brian Morrow, were resigning from their roles as well. Many online again wondered if the resignations were related to the poor reception of the Ocean Explorer realm, but this is merely speculation. Other rumors circulated attempting to make sense of the
most
ride's
likely.
closure. Some believe that an injury had occurred on the ride or that SeaWorld was suing either the designers or the manufacturers
An
over technical
injury.
issues. Currently, there is no evidence to support these claims. Without
Can
explanation,
you imagine
Submarine
an
Quest
accident
remained
happening
closed
on
throughout the
Submarine
spring of
Quest?
2018. In May, the San Diego
The only thing I
Union
can think
Tribune
of is
ran
like a
piece
poor
on the
kid just
attraction.
like
SeaWorld San
running out
Diego's
of
official
the
statement on the ride
running
was,
out of the
quote, "As we
vehicle and
conveyed
off
to
the
our
side
park
of
guests who've
the
asked,
cliff."
The Submarine Quest ride at Ocean Explorer is currently undergoing maintenance. As soon as there is additional information, we will communicate that to you and our guests. Theme park consultant Dennis Spiegel believed that the maintenance issues were not so severe that the ride needed to be shut down, but rather the public's response to the ride was so overwhelmingly negative that it was best to keep it closed. Despite the open-ended response on the ride's status, SeaWorld removed all mention of the ride from the park's website. The attraction's name was soon removed from the park's maps as well, with the illustration being modified to remove the ride cars. On May 10, 2018, Electric Eel debuted at SeaWorld San Diego. Billed as an addition to the Ocean Explorer area despite being fairly disconnected from it geographically, the short coaster was received well, and it effectively distracted guests from Submarine Quest's continued closure. In the summer of 2018, leftover Submarine Quest toys could be found at SeaWorld Orlando and Busch Gardens Tampa, despite the ride remaining closed and also being on the other side of the country. On July 2, 2018, Legoland California, a theme park just 30 miles north of SeaWorld San Diego, debuted their own submarine ride, named Lego City Deep Sea Adventure. The attraction actually placed guests under the water to view real sea creatures, which also featured more story and more show scenes. With a longer ride time and an actual feeling of discovery and exploration, Lego's Submarine Ride was everything that guests wanted and expected from Submarine Quest, and audiences were quick to notice the juxtaposition. In October of 2018, 16 months after its opening and 10 months after its closure, the sign for Submarine Quest was taken down. The ride sat dormant for over a year while the rest of Ocean Explorer continued to operate. On March 16,
Why would you open it for? Why would you
SeaWorld
close it for
announced
more
the
than a
closure
year?
of all its theme parks due to
Like,
the
why not
COVID-19
just?
pandemic. SeaWorld San Diego
Why
was
would
the
you close
last
it
of the SeaWorld
for
parks to
more than a
reopen,
year and say
not
that it's just
opening
for
its gates
maintenance?
until April 12, 2021.
Just tell
When
them
it
that it's
did,
not
it
gonna
was
open
revealed
again.
that work walls had been constructed around Submarine Quest. One guest noted that about 20% of the ride track has been removed, including the building for the ride's only dark ride portion, confirming that Submarine Quest is now officially defunct. Submarine Quest is a perplexing story.
It's dead.
Most tales of ride failures have an obvious contributing factor, such as a budget cut, a mechanical flaw, a rush to market, or a world-shattering news event that suddenly makes the initial concept taboo halfway through development. However, Submarine Quest did not have an obvious hurdle. While budget, time constraints, and mechanics certainly could have contributed to the attraction's failure, based on available information, it seems just as likely that it was simply a bad idea with bad execution. The design team clearly put a lot of energy and thought into the attraction, but
This
in
is a
all of the wrong
bad
areas,
idea.
and the heavy marketing
Calling
efforts and
you out.
enthusiasm from SeaWorld staff could not distract from the ride's glaring and overwhelming creative failures. Submarine Quest is not only a result of the precarious position SeaWorld was in at the time of its construction, it's also a perfect representation of it. Submarine Quest, like SeaWorld, had a huge identity problem. It did not know what it should be, and it certainly did not know what audiences wanted from it. As SeaWorld continues to rebrand and evolve, the company can only hope that their parks as a whole meet a different fate than that of Submarine Quest.
What is this? It's the greatest dark ride in the world.
What is this? Bitch, I don't even know.
I should go for a run today.
Shut up.
It's concerning the son of Beast. I mean, you hate to think it might have happened, but did Kings Island hide the truth about the roller coaster's safety?
Well, speaking of, I have new point redeems in the point redeems. I have new rewards. And you can, if you're interested, you can save up your points. Did I put the I had a thing. Is it still up? I don't even know. I had a thing that said karaoke stream, but I don't know if it's there anymore. I guess not. Let me just change that real quick. There we go. It's a community challenge. Community challenge. Start. But yeah, for the measly sum of 20,000 points, I will do a karaoke stream because I really want to do one and I'm not making it a sub goal anymore. Speaking of, I should probably move that box that says the sub goal, shouldn't I? Yeah, okay.
I could have spun it with my finger.
It was that loose?
It was that loose.
Hiya, my name's Kevin Perjurer, and welcome to another edition in Defunctland. For background/context
Oh god,
on
I
this
forgot
series,
he used
please
his
visit
voice.
defunctland.com with the link below. In case you are not already aware, Defunctland has a Facebook page and discussion group, so after this video, give it a like if you can, and join the group so we can have post-episode discussions and more conversations on extinct attractions. Today, we will be attempting to resurrect Kings Island's extinct roller coaster, Son of Beast. This is Defunctland's first roller coaster edition, and it was suggested by all of these great viewers, so thank you and everyone else who has been commenting. Son of Beast was located in Kings Island in Mason, Ohio from May 26, 2000 to June 16, 2009, and it has one of the most complex histories of any roller coaster to date. In 1895, a wooden roller coaster entitled Flip Flap Raceway opened at Sea Lion Park on Coney Island. The coaster was built and tested in Ohio, using monkeys and sandbags before human trials. The owner of Sea Lion Park, Paul Boyton, liked the coaster and wanted it as an attraction for his park. The coaster was the first looping roller coaster in North America and the first wooden looping coaster in the world. This was also one of the last roller coasters to have a completely circular loop. These types of loops cause an extremely uncomfortable amount of G-force for the rider, and most roller coasters with loops now use an oval or teardrop shape. For this reason, Flip Flap Raceway closed with Sea Lion Park in 1902. 70 years later, an entertainment production company, Taft Broadcasting, opened its first amusement park in Mason, Ohio. Kings Island debuted to the public on April 29, 1972. There were 4 roller coasters present with the park on opening day, one of which was the Racer, a wooden coaster designed by famous designer John C. Allen, that was arguably responsible for the reinvigoration of roller coasters in the 1970s and on. So Kings Island had a great start, but it wouldn't be until 1979 that they released their first monster.
So I got that going
when
for
the
me.
Beast opened
Which
at
is
Kings
nice.
Island, it was the longest, fastest, and tallest wooden roller coaster in the world. It reached speeds of 65 miles an hour, peaked at 110 feet tall, and was 7,359 feet long. It was designed to take advantage of the naturally hilly terrain of the park. So while it only reached 110 feet off the ground, its largest drop was actually 141 feet. The attraction had a long ride time as well, over 4 minutes in length. It originally featured 3 underground tunnels before the second and third were redesigned to be 1. The Beast's ride experience was exhilarating and groundbreaking, and its marketing campaign was equally as impressive.
Kings Island dares you to come face to
Wildlife
face
has
with
turned
the
this guy into a beast.
7,400 feet of unrestrained terror. In a 70-mile-per-hour attack on your senses, the Beast throws you screaming through 3 tunnels, takes you higher than any other coaster. Come face to face with the Beast. The Beast. The biggest, baddest, longest, fastest coaster in the world.
The simple story of a wild animal running through the woods
biggest,
of Rivertown,
baddest,
the section of
longest,
the park that the
girthiest,
Beast
I
was
mean, what?
located in, was made all the more convincing by the heavily wooded area that the
Thanks,
coaster
Pickle.
inhabited. 20 years after the park opened, Kings Island would change ownership, with Paramount Communications Incorporated buying the previous owner's parks for $400
Appreciate
million.
it.
Paramount used their movie properties to their advantage, drawing inspiration from Disney Parks and Universal Studios. In 1998, a separate company, Premier Parks, acquired Six Flags theme parks. Premier then began renaming their own amusement parks with the Six Flags label. This included Louisville's Kentucky Kingdom, located only 2 hours from Kings Island. Rumors began circulating that Kentucky Kingdom was about to receive some huge upgrades, posing a threat to Kings Island. Paramount decided to beat them to the punch, and in 1999, Kings Island expanded with the addition of the Paramount Action Zone, a section of the park that included attractions based on Paramount's properties, such as Face Off, for example. But Kings Island had something big in mind for the second year of its expansion, and a huge announcement was made on May 11th, 1999.
You know, the Beast was enchained in 1979, and at the time, even then, it was acclaimed as the world's greatest roller coaster.
Looks like somebody's getting a little on the nasty side, guys. Can you, thanks. I guess it's a little hard to miss. This you might think is one of Siegfried and Roy's white tigers, but it's not. This is the birthday gift that we want to present today. with tremendous
Dun,
pride,
dun, dun,
we are
dun,
excited
dun,
to
dun,
introduce to
dun.
you Son of
It's an empty crate. Are you surprised? Because neither are we. Bam, 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 bam. Clap, 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 clap.
to the Beast. The Son of Beast will be the biggest, baddest wooden roller coaster in the world when it opens next year.
The tallest wooden roller coaster, the fastest wooden roller coaster, and the only wooden roller coaster on Earth to feature an inversion, the second ever after Flip
That
Flap
sounds like a
Raceway.
terrible
Son of
idea.
Beast will be 218 feet tall and reach a top speed of 78.4
The one wooden
miles
roller
per hour.
coaster that
Even
has an
the second
inversion.
drop was an impressive 160
I wonder why
feet
none of the
tall.
other ones
The
do.
teardrop loop reached a height of 118 feet. The beams and supports were steel, but the track never converted, remaining wooden throughout the ride and the loop. It was constructed by the Roller Coaster Corporation of America, who had originally shown interest in building a wooden hypercoaster a few years prior. Exactly 8 months after the ride's announcement, on January 11th, 2000, a windstorm caused some of the temporary wooden supports to collapse. This was the first sign that something was going wrong with the construction, but Kings Island assured everyone that the accident was not a huge issue and that the ride would still open in April. Speculation grew that something was happening behind the scenes, and Kings Island, for whatever reason,
Everything is fine. The mayor was merely being an idiot.
The next day, with Kings Island citing a 15-foot rough section of the track. On May 26th, the coaster reopened. Kings Island reported that they had fixed the problems and Son of Beast was there to stay. But did it live up to the hype?
Massive Talent is 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
I'm pretty sure that's the actor Nick Cage.
The ultimate.
Guests would enter Outpost 5, a security tower that was
Domo,
dispatching vehicles
thank
to
you
check
for
on a
the
captive
points.
creature, the Son of Beast. The $20 million coaster was impressive, but not decisively better than its father. From the beginning, fans were split. Some preferred the original Beast, while
Thanks
others
for the
enjoyed
points and
new
exposing
coaster.
yourself so
Son
that
of
I
Beast's
know you're
ride
here,
was remarkably
jackass.
bare, with no
Just
tunnels
kidding.
or forests to entrench guests into the experience. Also, the Son of Beast was shorter, in both track and length, with a ride time of around 3.5 minutes. There was no doubt that from the start, the Sun was more wild, and as Kings Island and its guests would learn,
Son of
dangerously
Beast.
unpredictable. In November of 2000, months after the opening of Son of Beast, Paramount filed a lawsuit against the Roller Coaster Corporation of America and Wooden Structures Incorporated for faulty engineering and construction of the ride. They would also file a suit against Universal Forest Products of Hamilton for allegedly providing subgrade lumber. The Roller Coaster Corporation of America fought back, revealing that they had actually been fired at some point during the construction process, and that Kings Island's team had taken over and completed the ride themselves to save money. The company also added that Kings Island had ignored safety and construction advice on numerous occasions.
I am
It seemed
talking.
that this was going
Thanks
to
for
make
the
for an interesting
highlight.
court battle, and while all of this was happening, the Son of Beast was still operating. Throughout
Welcome
all
to
of
the
the
stream,
negative
Taku.
attention surrounding the ride, Kings
We're
Island
learning about
continued to
Son of
reaffirm that
Beast,
despite the problems with construction,
which is such
the
a
ride was
grammatical
completely
nightmare.
safe. The public seemed indifferent about the whole situation. Riders responded only somewhat confident when asked whether they felt the ride was safe or not. Whatever the glitches were, I feel if it's running, it's okay to ride. So no, I have no
Did you like the Beast?
Essentially, it seemed that
Yeah.
guests were willing to put aside the concerns for the ride's safety if it meant they got to experience the record-breaking coaster. Plus, the ride had been inspected 7 times for safety by the state of Ohio, but for some reason, the inspection job fell under the jurisdiction of their Department of Agriculture, that even admitted they
For
couldn't
why?
say whether it was truly safe or not because, quote, "We're not roller coaster engineers." Son of Beast continued to operate throughout
Then
the early
why?
2000s despite these concerns.
Then
In
why did
2005, the
you?
Roller Coaster
Okay,
Corporation
whatever.
of America went bankrupt. This caused Kings Island to shift the focus
Son of a
of their
what?
lawsuit towards the corporation.
It's called Son of Beast.
Still hoping
I'm
for
not
millions
kidding.
in
That's literally what it's
compensation for the
called.
missteps
Not
of
Son of the Beast,
On June
just Son
14th,
of Beast.
2005, Viacom, Paramount's parent
It's a
company,
roller
split
coaster.
into the CBS Corporation
A
and
wooden
Viacom.
roller coaster that
CBS
was the
took Paramount
tallest, the
Parks with them,
fastest, and the
and 6
one
months
roller
later,
coaster that was
CBS would
wooden
put
that
the
included
division
an
up for
inversion.
sale.
So
6
you
months
can
after
tell it's
that,
good, and it
Cedar
didn't
Fair
cause
bought
any
Paramount
problems.
Parks. That was on June 30th, 2006. On July 9th, 2006, Kings Island rushed
No.
all rescue teams to help 27
Domo, I swear to
stuck
God.
riders evacuate Son of Beast. Not only had the ride vehicle not returned to the station, but it had violently stopped in
I'm
one of the
arresting
final
you for
sections of the
public
coaster,
indecency.
causing all of the riders to be jerked forward.
Fucking fine. Hang on, let me just Are you happy now?
All 27 were taken to local
That's a lie.
hospitals. Most were released within a few hours, but a few
It's called
stayed to be treated for
sarcasm,
non-critical
Tucker.
injuries. No one knows for sure what caused the ride to stop abruptly. It was later revealed that a piece of wood had cracked.
Wow.
But it wasn't clear if that caused the accident
You two are
or if that was
degenerates.
just another entirely separate problem. Immediately after, Ohio's Department of Agriculture began an investigation, and Cedar Fair shut down.
Why
the
is it the
attraction for
Department of
the season. Some of these
Agriculture?
needed to be changed before it
Why do
reopened.
they need
The
to
ride was too
investigate
jerky,
it?
and riders regularly complained that the shakes on the turns were too uncomfortable. Cedar Fair's solution to this was lighter ride vehicles, but this came with a price. The new trains could not complete
I'm
the
out.
loop,
Goodbye.
leading to
Later,
its removal.
Tuck.
On July 4th, 2007,
Thanks
Son
for
of Beast
sticking
reopened
around and
without its
leaving when it
signature
counts.
inversion. Since this, and
Fucking
actually
coward.
quite recently, a few wooden roller coasters featuring inversions have debuted, but none with a vertical loop such as Son of Beast or Flip-Flap Raceways. In 2008,
Son of
Kings Island
Beast.
lost the case with the insurance company, but this would be the least of their worries, because on June 16, 2009, Son of Beast would close down once again. Kings Island offered no official closure
Hydration.
statement, but they began
Where's
to
my
remove
water
the
bottle?
coaster from their website and marketing. They announced that it would not reopen for 2010. Then a
Yeah.
similar announcement was made in 2011, then again in 2012. Finally, on July 27, 2012, Kings Island announced that the attraction that had been sitting unused for 3 years would be demolished. Demolition began in September of that year and was completed by November. And
That
just
was
like
loud.
that, the Son of Beast was killed. So why did it close? Well, on June 16, 2009, a woman who had ridden Son of Beast a few weeks prior
Christ.
claimed that the
Stop
ride
it!
caused a blood vessel to burst in her brain. The woman's claims worried park officials, who closed the
God
ride
damn it.
and waited for Ohio's Department of Agriculture to complete their investigation. The results showed that the attraction was structurally fine.
Thanks for
even
all
though
those
by this time,
redeems.
6 accidents had happened. The incident with the entire car, the woman's aneurysm,
Make me
and
choke
4
on my
other
water
minor
for it.
cases. A few months later, in November of 2009,
You're trying to kill me,
an
aren't you?
engineer on the previous investigation by
Fucking
the
dick.
Department of Agriculture revealed details on the ride's structural integrity. In a testimony for a lawsuit
Maybe they
made by
thought
one
there
of
were
those
actual
27
beasts
injured
on the
passengers,
coaster.
the man said that from the beginning, Kings Island had known about major problems with Son of Beast. Problems
Got
more
him. I
serious
hate
than a
you.
15-foot rough patch. Kings Island had supposedly known that the low-quality wood used to build the
WK,
ride
no
was
you
causing
don't.
the
You're trying to
coaster
kill me.
sway. This led to wood cracking and bolts loosening. When there was a problem with a part of the ride,
If you want me
Kings
dead,
Island would,
just say
quote,
so.
fix them Band-Aid style and then wait and see what happened. This testimony caused even more negative attention and pushed Kings Island to close it permanently. Cedar Point probably wasn't too sad to see it go, as they had no involvement in its production and essentially abandoned it in use. Many
He sounds like a
parties are
seal.
to blame for the coaster's failure, and it is now remembered as one
Rip
of
in
the biggest
peace.
failures in amusement park history and arguably the most infamous roller coaster ever built. The coaster was not without its fans, though, and Kings Island did not try to erase it completely, as there are some remnants of Son of Beast still at Kings Island today. For one,
Son of
Outpost
Beast.
5 became a seasonal haunted house attraction for the park's Halloween theme nights, and the land that Son of Beast once occupied was taken by another record-breaking coaster, the Banshee, the longest inverted coaster in the world. In the themed Hughes Cemetery lies
not
a
wooden,
tribute
is
to
it?
Son of Beast,
I hope
with
not.
an eternal flame in remembrance of the animal that once wildly roared in its pen, and on the other side of the park, its father still rages through the forest, peeking above the tree line to view the area that his son once inhabited.
Look at how they've massacred my boy.
So that is the history of Son of Beast. To learn more about the attraction, check out Theme Park Tourist's article on its downfall. I know a lot of you have suggested that I make Defunctland in a video game such as Planet Coaster, and from what I understand, these games are too limited to
Denied
create the
by
majority
law.
of the attractions that we are going to recreate. That said,
I mean, it's kind of hard to. Shut up, Disney.
in 1971, in the far
It's
back
kind of hard to
corner of
prove you love
Disneyland
me
Park
when you
sat a
just
section
tried to
named
waterboard
Indian
me.
Village. The small land was far less
And you
popular
shot
than
me
the rest
twice.
of the areas of Disneyland, and park executives were
You know,
hoping
that
to draw
kinda puts
more
a
of the
damper
crowds
on my
to the
love for
park's
you.
back corner. Disney was also planning to clone the Country Bear Jamboree, which had opened at Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom on
got
October 1st,
shot.
1971. Just 1 week after the Bears' debut, news broke that the audio animatronic show, along with a new land, would be replacing the Indian Village in Disneyland. The new land was to be named Bear Country. While Disney was
Almost
creating their own cast of
heaven,
lovable bears, another
West
sloth of furry friends
Virginia,
were becoming more and more popular
New
with
Ridge
young children.
Mountains,
Zeke and Zeb and Ted and Fred and a bear named
Shenandoah
Tennessee had
River.
nothing on Papa and Mama and brother and sister. These were the Berenstain Bears. and may also
Bernstein
live
Bears.
deep in the heart of bear country.
Does it really? It's a little bit. He tried to get me to hydrate and then immediately shot me in the back.
Met at a drawing class in the early 1940s. After marrying in 1946 and giving birth to their son, Leo, in 1948, the two illustrators ventured into the world of publishing.
Leo.
In 1951, they released Berenstain's Baby Book, a comical book for couples navigating the waters of parenthood. The Berenstains continued to produce more adult-oriented fare, such as the Loverboy trilogy, including the interesting Office Loverboy, a collection of comics depicting the rampant workplace harassment of the early 60s and mid-forever, with a funny and sexy approach. For instance, how to tell what happened at the office today without asking. A service for wives whose husbands probably wouldn't tell them the truth anyway. Made a pass at secretary, didn't get to first base. Made a pass at secretary, got to first base. These books were either gripping satirical takes on the problematic climate of the corporate workplace, or they weren't, in which case, wow. After their scorched earth approach to adult comics, the Berenstains turned their attention to family advice literature.
I shot you while
they decided
facing
that
you.
For their next novel, a family of bears would make the perfect protagonist.
Sure you did. Keep telling yourself that.
Easy to draw, and had a very lovable appeal.
That'll hold up in court, I promise.
To the desk of Theodore Geisel.
I assure
almost
you.
2 years of notes from the famed children's author, Stanley and Janet
I was looking right at her while I shot her.
1962 with Susan Random House's beginner books. The book starred a family of bears, including Mama Bear, the wisest and strictest member of the family.
I was facing her.
Papa Bear, the bumbling and goofy father figure, and Small Bear, the child of the family who follows along with his father's shenanigans. In the book, Papa Bear ignores the advice of Mama Bear, who tells Papa to buy honey from the store. The simple lesson of listening to instructions was illustrated when Papa Bear and Small Bear were chased through the woods by a swarm of bees. The bear characters featured in the Big Honey Hunt were only intended to stick around for the one book. Stanley and Janice moved on to start work on a new project featuring penguins, but soon after the Big Honey Hunt's publication, the couple received a call from Theodore Geisel. Using the brilliant and whimsical vocabulary and phrasing for which he became popular, Geisel informed them that, quote, "We're selling the hell out of the bear book." Geisel then told them to start work on more books, and without asking,
we need
shortened
more
their names
bears
to Stan and Jan and named the series Berenstain Bears. The newly named Stan and Jan then set out on a quest to answer the age-old question, can you milk a bear? They would release their second book, The Bike Lesson, in 1964, with many more stories to come.
Imagine milking a bear.
In
Yikes.
Sandusky, Ohio, the amusement park Cedar Point was receiving some major upgrades.
Before
In
shooting you.
1965,
It's
new
free real estate.
family-friendly attractions such as the Space Spiral and the famous Jungle Larry's African Safari opened. Also new that year was a dark ride named Earthquake. Earthquake was a ride transferred from a small park named Freedomland in New York City. The dark ride's premise revolved around the catastrophic San Francisco earthquake of 1906 that killed thousands of people. Told in spectacular color and action. Cars on a track would drive guests through the city moments before and during the disaster. Crumbling buildings and
terrible.
cityscapes shook around the guests as they made their way through the expansive dark ride. Earthquake would inhabit a large section
It's
of
like
the
if they
park's
made a
North
dark
Lake
ride
Erie
over
side,
Hurricane
near a
Katrina.
mini golf
That's
course,
terrible.
the main arcade, and restaurants. Earthquake would continue operation for decades, entertaining guests into the 80s. By 1985, the Berenstains had published over 50 Berenstain Bear books, had produced 5 television specials, had been developing an animated series for Saturday morning programming, and had even released a video game. People loved the bears, and children especially couldn't get enough of them. Mama, Papa, Brother, and the late edition, Sister Bear, were beloved characters, and the Bear family's home, a split-level treehouse in Bear Country, was a recognized setting in pop culture. Kids across the country were growing up on the lessons taught by the Berenstains. Subject matters range from simple stories such as the consequences of a messy room or eating too much junk food, to more controversial topics such as the extent
Must
of
leave
God's
Spotty
love.
connection at
While
work.
the
Just wanted to
Berenstain
swing
Bears
by.
were
You're
rising
at
to the
work?
top of pop
Why are you
culture,
here?
the 1906 San Francisco
Go
earthquake had been basically
focus on
forgotten.
work.
Cedar Point was looking to renovate Earthquake's ride space into something entirely different.
Thanks
along
for
with other
popping
renovations to
by.
the park, including the addition of a bobsled coaster named
Make sure you don't
Avalanche
fall
Run.
off a truck this time.
Much more than one single attraction, Cedar Point wanted to create an entire land that offered engaging
And no to hurt your
activities
foot
in an
again.
immersive, kid-friendly atmosphere. All they needed was a theme, and fortunately, there was a family-friendly bedtime book series that was steadily rising in popularity across the nation. And
Later,
perhaps
Taco.
the best part, no other theme park chain had tapped into the intellectual property. While Knott's Berry Farm in California used the Peanuts characters for their children's land, Camp Snoopy, and Worlds of Fun in Kansas City, Missouri used Sam Panda with their children's land, pandemonium.
Oh,
no
Lord.
park had licensed the bears.
He's
So
scary.
in the early 80s, Cedar Point did just that. The park created walk-around characters based off of the famous bears, and they began to develop a land to take the place of the earthquake attraction. With a generous $500,000 budget, Cedar Point
Kung
set
Fu
forth
Panda
making
looked
Bear Country
funky.
a real
Oh,
place.
Lord.
By June of 1985, Bear Country was a fully realized and fully developed land with winding pathways and
Don't
rich
expose
scenery.
me.
The grand opening
He's
took place
okay.
on June 29th, 1985, with Stan and
I
Jan
still
in
love you
attendance.
despite the
On
fact that you're
morning,
stupid.
Mama, Papa, brother, and
You
sister
keep hurting
took their
yourself.
places at the front of Cedar Point to march with the Cedar Point
But also
Beach
stop
Band
hurting
and
yourself,
Stan and Jan
stupid.
into Bear Country. After they officially opened the land to the public, Stan and Jan stuck around to sign autographs and read stories. Berenstain Bear Country was officially open, and the young guests of Cedar Point began to flock to it.
Have you seen where the Berenstain Bears live at Cedar Point? It's Berenstain Bear Country, a very special place where you can read
Show me where
books,
the
listen
bears
to
are.
tapes, and play games with all your favorite Berenstain Bears. Berenstain Bear Country at Cedar Point.
When it opened, Berenstain Bear Country was a completely indoor playland featuring recreations of such classic Berenstain Bear locations as the Bear Treehouse, the Old Bee Tree, and Spook Hill. The area also featured the Actual Factual Science Fair, a museum with exhibits and experiments to teach kids the inner workings of electricity, telephones, and magnetic fields.
I'm gonna
and the Bear
shock
Country
your body,
Library,
kids.
which
Watch
has
this.
a variety of activities such as reading and coloring.
Wanna
Story
watch me
time can
chug
be
4
found at
monsters
school
at one
and the
time?
bears could be seen running around and playing with children.
I can
The goal with
vibrate
Bear
at different
Country wasn't just to bring
frequencies.
to life
I can
the
hear
livable world of the
air.
bears, but to do so in the spirit of the books. Just as the Berenstains wrote their stories with lessons in mind, Cedar Point put a strong focus on education, storytelling, and lesson learning into Bear Country. Cedar Point's initial Berenstain Bear Country entertained guests for 7 years, before being greatly expanded in
7 years?
1992
My
with
goodness.
a large outdoor play area, replacing the Sky Slide and mini golf course. The new area, 6 times the
Not the
original
mini
size of
golf
Berenstain Bear
course.
Country, featured new attractions such as a larger family treehouse, a dinosaur pit where kids could dig for fossils, the Bear Country Railroad, the Bear Country Boys Club, the spooky old tree slide, a rocking patio, and other playground equipment. With Bear Country bringing young guests into Cedar Point, Cedar Fair, Cedar Point's parent company, was ready to capitalize on its success elsewhere. At the time of Bear Country's expansion in 1992, Cedar Fair operated 3 parks: Cedar Point in Ohio, Valley Fair in Michigan, and Dorney Park in Pennsylvania. Both Valley Fair and Dorney Park would be given their own Berenstain Bear Countries. Valley Fair's addition cost an estimated $1.9 million to build and opened in
Cedar Fair's
1994.
Six Flags
Berenstain
now,
Bear
isn't
Country
it?
at Dorney Park cost an estimated $2.5 million to build and opened in 1995. A spokesperson for Dorney Park said that it was, quote, the first multi-purpose attraction for children in that age group to open in the past decade at a major theme park in the Northeast. Finally sticking it to all the other single-purpose attractions for children in that age group that had opened in the past decade at a major theme park in the Northeast. The Berenstain Bear Country sections at both Valley Fair and Dorney Park would be close to identical to Cedar
Still have
Point's,
water in my throat.
with few attractions being added or removed from the layout. Dorney's promotions focused on their Bear Museum and Computer Cave, which gave young guests the opportunity to use touchscreen computers that offered coloring games or taught lessons about recycling. Also, the Actual Factual Science Fair at Dorney was changed to the Actual Factual Science Mobile. Here, kids could press buttons that would spark electricity between 2 poles, pedal bikes that would charge light bulbs, or learn about gravity through a classic coin whirlpool. There was also the office of G. Grizzly MD, which offered health science exhibits where children could measure their own heart rate and height, weigh themselves, and conduct fake x-rays. Scattered throughout Bear Country were telephones that children could pick up and listen to stories from different members of the Bear family. In 1995, the same year Dorney's Bear Country opened, Cedar Fair would acquire another park, Worlds of Fun in Kansas City, Missouri. Cedar Fair immediately started improving the park, adding new rides and opening another Berenstain Bear Country in 1997 in place of the park's Pandemonium section. Cedar Fair was more like Cedar Bear. The interactivity and focus on education in the Bear Countries across Cedar Fair's theme parks were unlike any other theme park attractions for kids at the time. Where most child play areas would only offer physical activities like playgrounds and jungle gyms, Bear Country aimed to provide a fully immersive experience. Bear Country taught lessons, it told stories, and it sparked young imaginations. While Berenstain Bear Country continued to entertain guests across the country, Cedar Fair continued to expand.
Until
In 1997, the company took a huge step forward by acquiring Knott's Berry Farm in Buena Park, California. This gave Cedar Fair their first year-round amusement park, and Knott's Berry Farm came with a tradition of great entertainment and theming. It also came with Camp Snoopy. Knott's also had an agreement with the Mall of America, which had its own indoor Camp Snoopy. Due to this, Cedar Fair decided not to extend its licensing agreement with the Berenstains, instead opting to build Camp Snoopys in all of their regional parks. 1998 would be the final season for Berenstain Bear Country at Cedar Point, and the Peanuts characters would arrive to greet guests at Camp Snoopy the following season. Charlie Brown, Snoopy, Peppermint Patty, and Lucy officially replaced the Bear family for meet and greets. The Bear Country Railroad became Peanuts Express, and more rides were added to the area, including Balloon Race, Peanuts 500, Red Baron, Snoopy Bounce, and even a roller coaster called Woodstock Express. It wasn't long before Cedar Fair's other theme parks followed suit, and by the mid-2000s, every Bear Country had transitioned into Camp Snoopy. New Berenstain Bear books are still being published today. While the Bear family is no longer in the limelight, generations of children grew up with Stanley and Janice's creation, in books, on TV, and especially in the parks. The Berenstain sections of the Cedar Fair parks became a second home to the young children visiting the land, with fond memories of colorful, larger-than-life,
I can just immediately imagine someone just leaving their kid there while they go like have a drink or something at another part of the park.
You know, can I get some claps and a little banjo? Hopping off the pages straight into your brain. It's the factually family of Berenstain. We got mama, papa, we got sister and brother. The Berenstain Bears ain't like no other, but there's more bears in the back, more bears in the front. Follow me now because we're going on a bear hunt. We're going on a bear hunt. We're gonna catch a big one. I'm not scared, but a beautiful day.
What is this song?
Amazon was definitely a step up. I went from $10.10.
Shut up.
When the clock strikes 6:30, babe, time to head for golden lights. Hey, it's a good time for the great taste dinner at McDonald's.
Dinner.
It's Mac tonight. Come on, make it Mac tonight.
In 1986, a man named Brad Ball was the president of a small Los Angeles advertising agency. He was brainstorming ideas for a new campaign for his client, the McDonald's Operators Association of Southern California. He became enthralled by Mac the Knife, a song made popular by Bobby Darin in 1959. Despite the melody being an archaic murder ballad, Ball saw its potential for McDonald's advertisements, as it possessed the word Mac, giving it a key relation to the fast food chain's signature sandwich. Ball and his company started listening to different variations of the song and began working on a parody. The agency also created a character to sing the parody in their advertisements named Mac Tonight. The character drew inspiration from Mac's Headroom, a British-made television character known for his waxy appearance and dark shades that was extremely popular in the mid-1980s. Mac's Headroom is most known today as the character portrayed in one of the most famous television hijackings of all time. The advertisers wanted the cult following that Mac's Headroom had garnered for their new character. Mac Tonight was given 1950 shades, a human body in a suit, and a large moon head. The lyrics of Mac the Knife were changed to promote McDonald's at night, to attract the fast food dinner crowd. 4 TV spots were made on a budget of $500,000. They took a vastly different tone than the other McDonald's ads airing at the time. The current campaigns featured smiling and colorful characters.
Hamburger University with Ronald McDonald.
Good morning, class.
Good morning, Ronald.
Today's subject, the Hamburglar. The Hamburglar is very clever and very sneaky.
The Hamburglar!
And he loves taking McDonald's hamburgers. So, what should you yell when you see it?
Help, Ronald, sailor!
That's right.
Uh-oh.
Hamburglar.
It's a good time for the train.
You've got a lot to learn.
Don't take burgers, Rubble Rubble. Of McDonald's.
Mac Tonight, on the other
God,
hand,
Ronald would be kidnapped!
In late 1986, the commercials aired throughout the West Coast. They were an instant hit, becoming so popular that McDonald's picked them up for national spots in early 1987 and began airing them in September of that year. This was at the height of the burger wars of the mid-80s, in which major fast food restaurants vastly increased their advertising budgets to beat competitors. Wendy's was just coming off of their extremely popular Where's the Beef campaign.
Where's the beef? Some hamburger places give you a lot less beef on a lot of bun.
Where's the beef?
At Wendy's, we serve a hamburger we modestly call a single. And Wendy's single has more beef than the Whopper or Big Mac. At Wendy's, you get more beef and less bun.
Hey, where's the beef?
And Burger King was in the middle of their failing Where's Herb campaign.
At this time, Burger King begins a nationwide search for one man. His name is Herb. We do know Herb is the one man who's never tasted a Burger King burger. Herb has never enjoyed this juice, this sizzling beef, or grown to love flame broiling instead of frying.
Mac Tonight gave McDonald's a much-needed advantage over their competitors. In the advertising, Mac Tonight was portrayed by actor Doug Jones. This was the actor's first role, and he would go on to a successful career in Hollywood, most recently starring in the critically acclaimed film The Shape of Water. The actor starred in a total of 27 TV spots, with only 2 being filmed without him. Mac Tonight also spawned a walk-around character that would appear in McDonald's locations for special events, drawing crowds as large as 1,500 during his peak popularity.
Hello! Welcome to the stream. We're learning about Mac Tonight.
Come on out and meet me at a McDonald's near you.
This is
Animatronic and sculpture versions of him were
not
added
the
to
strangest
McDonald's
mascot I've
locations throughout
seen,
the
but
country.
it's weird
Some
for
of
a
these would sing
McDonald's.
and play songs, but as time passed,
Hello,
many of these
hello!
animatronics were reduced to still statues after
You
their
like
birth.
my true
Mac
form.
Tonight's reign ended in late 1989.
My true
when Don Mitchell
gremlin-esque
Barron,
form.
the son of Bobby Darin, sued McDonald's, claiming that his father's performance style was copied without permission for their commercials. This was ultimately the end of the character in advertising, but he would reappear briefly from 1996 to 1997. in
PG and fantastic. I need one.
Well, if you're interested, I'm planning on opening some of these in about a week, I want to say.
I can't promise anything, but if I finish these commissions when I'm scheduled to, like when time allows me to, I should be able to open
However,
a few
it seemed
of
the
these
character had
next
lost
week.
its cool, as it would not appear in the States again.
I have my
It would
funds
appear around
situated. I will do
2007
it.
in CGI form for a Southeast Asian
You
McDonald's.
just
where
need
he was
a
received well by
reference, and I
audiences.
could draw you
Around
one.
2007, a rapping version of Mac Tonight utilizing an AT&T text-to-speech program was spread as a meme online.
Oh,
Using
no.
the name Moon Man, this version of Mac Tonight promoted white supremacy,
Not
police
Moon
brutality,
Man.
and racist propaganda. The meme mainly featured the character rapping to offensive parodies or remixes of popular songs. Though it decreased in popularity throughout the years, the meme was revitalized in 2015 by the alt-right movement, including being featured on a billboard supporting Donald Trump.
On a
This caused
billboard?
McDonald's to
Good
begin to
lord.
remove many of the animatronics from the restaurants, as well as YouTube to monitor and remove many Moon Man videos. While the racist meme has given a negative connotation to the once popular character, Mac Tonight is still fondly remembered by fans of the original advertisements. Some animatronics still remain at McDonald's locations, including a functioning one at the world's largest entertainment McDonald's. It is unfortunate
I'll have
that
to
the
think
meme
of a
had to
carrot.
ruin
I
the
will have.
legacy of Mac Tonight.
I
But
have
the
the
only
will
way
see
to
that
beat a
perfect
meme is with a
gremlin
better
form.
meme. And I think we can all agree that the real meme here is the way that Mac Tonight says dinner in the original advertisements.
Dinner.
Man, now I'm hungry for a McDonald's Big Mac for dinner.
Come on, make it Mac Tonight.
It's McDonald's
Sponsored
New
by
Year's
Subway.
celebration. Would you believe 2 double cheeseburgers for the price of 1? It's the burger gig that lasts a lot longer than any
Like a
New
lot
Year's
of things, it ends with white supremacy.
burger and get a second one free. So don't wait
Sag.
till noon. Check out some old-fashioned value. It's Mickey D's New Year's celebration. 2 double cheeseburgers for the price of
I have an
1.
idea, but her outfit isn't done.
This deal
That's
is on
okay.
Soul and Dime. Buy a double cheeseburger, get a
I'll
second
probably
one
have
free
them
starting
open for a while,
January
so
1st. You're gonna love the change at McDonald's.
Our ancestors had a mystical connection with red pandas.
Yay, turning red.
I don't understand why so many people hate on Turning Red. It was actually a pretty decent movie. I wouldn't say it's my favorite movie that came out this year, but it's not bad. Like people who are saying that it's bad because they can't relate to it is really telling, first of all. Really like that I would watch it again. Yeah. I watched it with my mom. And there are so many instances, like the scene where her mom like looks through her sketchbook and sees all the drawings, and her reaction to it. I was just like, yeah, I've been there. I've drawn stuff that has elicited that response from my mother, and now I can never watch the Matrix movies. Because I use that as an excuse. Oh no, yeah. I think she's more like. I don't think she cares anymore, but it sticks in the back of my head.
This episode of Yesterworld is sponsored by Verve. Be sure to stick around after the video to learn more and go to vrv.co/yesterworld to begin your free 30-day trial of Verve Premium.
Ah yes, Verve.
When looking back to some of
the
most
extension of
popular cartoons in the
Crunchyroll.
early 2000s,
Because that's
one
basically
iconic
all that they
character
offer
stands
on
the
there.
test of time and sticks out from the rest is Jimmy Neutron. For a few short years, the boy
Jimmy
genius
Neutron.
was everywhere. From his own successful movie and TV show to a full line of toys and several tie-in video games, you just couldn't escape
Have you
seeing
seen the
his
Jimmy
face
Neutron
wherever you
pilot?
looked.
Good lord,
And
it
as
is
a result of his
atrocious.
wild popularity, the Jimmy Neutron franchise was the perfect medium for a new theme park attraction, and Universal Studios had the perfect idea in mind. So let's explore the history behind one of the last great Nickelodeon cartoons, and the ride that came along with it, Jimmy Neutron's Nicktoon Blast.
What have I done?
In order to properly set the stage for Jimmy Neutron's Nicktoon Blast, we must first travel back to the 1980s, a time long before anyone had ever heard the name Jimmy Neutron, something that wouldn't change for a very long time. In July of 1981, writer and director John A. Davis began working on an idea for a movie he called Runaway Rocket Boy, which involved a young genius named Johnny Quasar, who built a rocket ship in order to run away from his parents. At this time, the project was intended to be a fully live-action production, and Davis shopped his idea around for several years in an attempt to acquire a loan to begin work on the film.
Nemo has to sleep now, but I
After
wanted to
failing
stop by
acquire
for a
the
bit.
funding
Okay,
necessary to bring
rest well,
Johnny Quasar
Nemo.
to life, Davis
I'm
shelved the
glad
idea
you
while he
stopped
began work
by.
on
I'm
his
glad
own
you said
animation
hi.
studio, DNA Productions, in 1987.
Rest well.
The
Good
project
night.
remained untouched for nearly a decade, when in
Hey,
early
babies, have a good night.
1995,
Have a
Davis
good night,
stumbled
too,
upon his old
Nemo.
script, and upon
I hope you
realizing the
sleep
idea
well
would
and your
work
sleep
far
isn't
better as a
interrupted.
CG animated production, began work on a
Good night,
40-second
sleep
demo
tight. Don't
based
let
on
the
his
bed
original
bug spider and
storyboards
apple a day
titled The
keeps the
Adventures
doctor
of
away, all
Johnny
that good stuff.
Quasar. The demo premiered at the 1995 SIGGRAPH CG convention and quickly became very notable in the CG
There was a
animation
CG convention?
community.
Hi, I'm Johnny Quasar, and this is my robot dog, Goddard. Bark, 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 bark.
Oh my god.
I made him myself. You see, I'm a genius, but sometimes I'm too smart for my own good.
The Adventures of Johnny Quasar won several
Oh
awards
my god.
and caught the attention of O Entertainment founder and Ace Ventura writer Steve Odekirk, who suggested to Davis that they create a second short to pitch to Nickelodeon as a full-on series. Davis worked to refine Quasar's character, making him slightly younger and giving him an even larger forehead and an impressive head of hair.
Oh my god.
Upon viewing the two shorts, Nickelodeon was immediately impressed with Johnny Quasar, with then-President Albie Heck describing the character as an Albert Einstein and Bart Simpson hybrid. Nickelodeon greenlit a 13-minute pilot with the request that the Johnny Quasar name be changed, just to not be confused with the similarly titled properties like Johnny Quest and Captain Quasar. The lead character's name was quickly changed to Jimmy Neutron, and work on the pilot began shortly thereafter, being completed in February of 1998. This pilot, titled Runaway Rocket Boy, is an homage to Davis's original script, scraps most of the original Johnny Quasar designs, with only Goddard and Jimmy's rocket retaining their original look. Runaway Rocket Boy included the vast majority of the elements that would later be seen in the widely released film and TV show. Nickelodeon was so impressed with the pilot that they decided to greenlight both a film and an animated series, with the idea being that both could use the same character models to save time and money. Production on the film began first in fall of 1999, although several shorts were also developed alongside the film in order to drum up hype for the movie and to introduce children to the new character. Before the film
Oh
had
god, I
even
remember
released,
some of those
Jimmy
shorts. They
Neutron
look
was
so
all over
weird.
the place due to a very aggressive marketing campaign. Several 1 to 2 minute shorts were aired on television and included on home releases of other Nickelodeon films, and Jimmy even had a very unique position as the official spokesperson of Trident Gum.
With my Hypno Beam, programming people is a snap. Hypno Beam?
I mean, sure, why not?
Whoa. Hey, Mom, let's go shopping. But I just went shopping. Okay, dear.
Jimmy Neutron's aggressive ad campaign caught
Time
the
to
attention of
hypnotize your
Universal
parents.
Studios,
Eat Trident
who were
Gum.
already heavily involved with Nickelodeon through their theme parks. For over 3 years, Universal Studios Florida had been working on a replacement for their day one attraction, the Fantastic World of Hanna-Barbera. While the simulator ride had been very popular during the early to late 1990s, interest had waned, and by the early 2000s, the ride had become one of Universal Studios' least popular attractions. A year prior to the release of Jimmy Neutron, Universal and Viacom had entered an agreement for a Nickelodeon-themed attraction, then called the Nicktoon Blast, to replace the Fantastic World of Hanna-Barbera, but Universal was unsure which Nicktoons character should host the new simulator ride. Their idea was to create a new ride featuring all of the popular Nicktoon characters of the time, with one central character traveling through the universes of the different
Oh,
popular
good, Butch
Nicktoon
Hartman
shows.
style.
This initial concept was created with
Yikes.
the intention of updating the ride every so often, adding new characters and removing those who were no longer relevant. At this time, Jimmy Neutron was still in post-production, and audiences had only been introduced to the character through shorts and other pre-release marketing. Despite this, Universal was confident the soon-to-be-released film would be successful enough to warrant its own attraction, and greenlit a new ride entitled Jimmy Neutron's Nicktoon Blast, which began animation production in secret alongside the theatrical film. Fortunately for Universal, upon release on December 21st of 2001, Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius was a massive success in every sense of the phrase. Audiences and critics alike loved the movie for its unique animation, memorable soundtrack, and touching moments, and financially the film brought home over $100 million on a $30 million budget.
I feel like
which
if they
also
had done
included
it with
production
any
of
other
assets the
character
studio could
besides
reuse
Jimmy, it would have
for
been
the
a
full-length television
a
show
much
that was quickly
more
pushed into production once the
long-
film became a hit. Universal breathed a sigh of relief
Excuse
and
me.
publicly announced Jimmy Neutron's Nicktoon
I don't
Blast
know.
on July 16th
What
of
am I trying to
2002,
say?
the very same
It would have
day that
lasted
Shrek 4D
longer.
was announced to be
What I'm trying to
replacing
say.
another opening day attraction, Alfred Hitchcock: The Art of Making Movies. Public reaction was mostly positive, as while the Fantastic World of Hanna-Barbera certainly had its fans, most theme park goers could agree that the ride was in desperate need of a re-theme. Hanna-Barbera closed its doors for good on October 20th of 2002, and the re-theme of the ride was done in record time. Within 1 week, the outside of the building had been stripped of all traces of Hanna-Barbera branding, and Universal Studios itself had very little involvement with the production of the ride film, other than the basic plot structure, as Nickelodeon Studios took care of all animation, and as a result, Universal only had minor work to complete before the new attraction could open to the public. With such an easy workload, Universal was able to complete the second fastest ride turnaround in park history, and Jimmy Neutron's Nicktoon Blast officially opened its doors on April 11th of 2003, following nearly a month of early access previews and only 5 months after the closure of the Fantastic World of Hanna-Barbera. The exterior of the show building was of course rebranded with Jimmy Neutron and various other Nicktoon characters, but the interior structure remained largely unchanged. The Hanna-Barbera clips that previously played were of course replaced with Nickelodeon clips, and the pre and main show were completely different narratively, but the areas retain the same layout. The pre-show begins with Jimmy welcoming the audience to his lab located at Nicktoon Studios, where the rest of the Nicktoons characters also reside. Jimmy then takes some time alongside a bumbling Carl to introduce you to his full lineup of rocket ships that he had been developing throughout the years.
Win at work by communicating effectively. With Grammarly, meet Dylan, who's prepping for a big...
Hi, Dylan.
Finally, it's with great pleasure and pride that I present to you
God, that audio quality is atrocious. Peek, peek.
Along with the Mark IV is my Mark II and the original, slightly unforgettable Mark I. What happened to the Mark III? Don't ask. The Mark IV is a triumph in rocket engineering. It's the fastest, strongest rocket ever built.
An intruder is then detected nearby, who
I
breaks
wonder
into
what the
the
voice
lab to
actress
reveal
that did
himself to
Jimmy
be
is
none
doing
other than
nowadays.
the evil Ooblar, who proceeds to steal and take off with Jimmy's Mark IV rocket. Jimmy decides to take chase, informing the audience that he will take the Mark II, and they can follow in the slightly unpredictable Mark I that he will control via remote control. The audience is then directed into the main theater and into their Mark I rockets, where the real show begins. The chase starts in the streets of Nicktoon Studios, passing by characters from shows such as Rocket Power, Ren and Stimpy, and Hey Arnold. The rockets then enter the Rugrats soundstage, crashing through Tommy Pickles' house and taking Angelica for a very uncomfortable ride. The Fairly Odd Parents Fairy World comes next, with Cosmo and Wanda attempting to help the situation.
Cosmo, Wanda, you've got to help us.
Elvis, you got it.
Hey, thank you very much. Good to be here. Yeah, you're...
Oh, my aching head.
Bacon head. Okay.
Bacon.
Don't let it be my head, Jimmy. This isn't really helping, guys. Cosmo, just give him your walk.
Okay, here, Carl.
Look at all these different animation styles clashing.
With Cosmo's wand now in the hands of Carl, Wanda teleports the rockets to the Yokian planet, where they find themselves trapped in the throne room of King Gubat and are confronted by Poltra, who fries Ublar and destroys the Mark IV rocket.
Giant
the engines
chicken.
fail in the remaining rockets, and Carl saves
Who thought
the
that
day
a
by
giant chicken
teleporting
in a
everyone
kids movie
safely
would
back
be
to
a good
Earth,
idea?
where they plunge into Bikini Bottom. SpongeBob, mistaking them for a rocket-powered jellyfish, latches onto the Mark II as the audience, Jimmy and Carl, travel through Bikini Bottom, and eventually the audience is caught in a drain pipe where they exit back into Jimmy's lab. Barely a second goes by before King Gubat storms in, forcing everyone to do the chicken dance. Carl, realizing that he still has Cosmo's wand, does the two most important things he can do to save the day.
Oh yeah! Superpower laser beam! Cool!
Oh, poo.
Nice shot, Carl!
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Check this out. Llama, 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 llama.
What? Thanks for helping me save the universe. Got a blast! Llama, 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 Carl!
With the ride over and the daily llama
love
quota
that he-
met, the audience would exit
I
into
love
a
that he just summons the
Nickelodeon-themed
Dalai
play
Lama
area
out
and
of
shop
nowhere.
named Nick Stuff, where they could take photos with characters and, of course, buy some Nickelodeon merchandise. Reviews for the ride were generally positive, with most agreeing that the ride did live up to its predecessor. Despite initial plans to continually update the ride, Jimmy Neutron's Nicktoon Blast remained virtually unchanged throughout its entire run. Other than the videos in the queue occasionally being swapped out to play current Nickelodeon clips and music videos, Jimmy Neutron's Nicktoon Blast was ultimately
Miranda
left alone
Cosgrove.
until 8 years later, on March 14th of 2011, when Universal Studios announced via Facebook that the attraction would begin operating seasonally, before closing permanently on August 18th of the same year. And on that day, the cries of millions of Jimmy Neutron fans rang out and were suddenly silenced. While Jimmy Neutron was still looked back upon fondly at the time, the show had been out of production for nearly 5 years, and the 2010 spin-off Planet Sheen had been nothing short of a total disaster.
Oof.
The ride's replacement, Despicable Me Minion Mayhem, officially opened on July 2nd of 2012. The new attraction does pay homage to Jimmy Neutron's Nicktoon Blast in a number of ways, as Jimmy Neutron's Mark I rocket can be seen briefly during the ride, and in the Despicable Me themed gift shop, another rocket can be seen, paying tribute to the Nickelodeon rocket that was once there. Luckily, the future isn't completely bleak for fans of the Boy Genius, as rumors of a full-on revival have been swirling for years, and as recently as 2018, original Jimmy Neutron visionary John A. Davis has said he has a full story for a revival, but is waiting for the right time to bring his idea to life. However, if you are feeling nostalgic in the meantime, Verve has you covered, and Verve has way more to offer than just classic.
No, it doesn't.
Today, I've got an extra awesome.
Sponsored by Raycon. Go to buyraycon.com/defunctland to save 15% today.
Shit, baby.
What's better than the smell of delicious food on a warm summer day? In this modern American kitchen is where we find our subject. This is Kevin.
Subject.
Kevin is a documentarian. A documentarian captures life and constructs stories about important topics such as injustice, crime, and roller coasters. He does not show his face, but he will show his hands. If we look closely at Kevin's hands, we can see that he is not
Look at these
just a
hands.
documentarian, but he is also a baker. Like bed sheets from a roadside motel, Kevin's hands are splattered with the hauntings of years of mistakes. This mark was when
Ew.
Kevin burned his finger attempting to remove a hot tray of cookies from his oven. This mark is from when Kevin overreacted to burning his finger on the oven, dropped the hot tray of cookies, and instinctively went to catch the tray with his bare hand. Needless to say,
Yep,
Kevin
sounds about
has
right.
years of experience in the kitchen. And today, for the first time, he will combine his passions and embark on a historical culinary adventure. Today, Kevin is going to learn the history of and concoct his own sandwich.
Wait a sec, you read that wrong.
Sorry?
You read it wrong. Do it one more time.
Okay. Today, Kevin is going to learn the history of and concoct his own handwich. What is a handwich?
I'll show you.
Introducing the handwich. This is not working.
Around 1986, a new food item debuted in Walt Disney World, named the Handwich. The Handwich was shaped like an ice cream cone, but instead of a waffle cone, it featured a cone-shaped sub-roll, and instead of ice cream, it had fillings. These included such delicacies as ham and cheese, pulled barbecue chicken, roast beef and cheddar, and even tuna salad. The Handwich was billed as the sandwich of the future.
They made tuna
Because of
into a
this, the Handwich
salad.
was sold at Epcot's The Land Pavilion's Farmers Market food court, as well as the Space Bar in Tomorrowland. It was also served in Adventureland at some point. Wherever it was billed as Disney's newest attraction, implying that you can ride the Handwich, when in reality the Handwich rides you. The official poster for the Handwich boasted that it was not just futuristic, but revolutionary. The, quote, first sandwich you can hold in one hand. The poster also stated that it was Disneylicious, and that those that consumed it were playing a part in the history of baking. Despite the heavy marketing effort, the Handwich
You
was
ever thought
discontinued
about
sometime in the
cutting a
mid-90s,
sandwich in half
leaving
and holding it
behind
with
more
one hand?
questions than answers. Luckily, those questions would linger, and the good people at Retro WDW would respark interest in the Handwich during their Retro Magic event in 2019. Here, historian Brian Miles gave a keynote speech on the Handwich, which was coded somewhat like a military briefing. Miles conducted an interview with former Imagineer Peggy Ferris, who had the inside scoop on the Handwich, and you'll never guess who was responsible for its creation.
Back at Imagineering, Michael Eisner challenged us
Dun, dun,
to
dun.
think
He's
about
back.
fun food. So that was the big idea.
In a surprising twist, Eisner pushed for fun food in part because when he was a young man, he visited the 1964 New York World's Fair, at which Disney famously contributed 4 groundbreaking attractions. While there, a young Eisner tried some of the fair's unique food offerings, including Belgian waffles. Over 2 decades later, Eisner was the CEO
creative
of the Walt
food-
Disney Company, and he
creative
challenged
food,
the company's Imagineers to concoct a unique culinary
what is it?
creation for the Disney parks. During a day-long brainstorming session,
Like asking people to make
Imagineers and
unique food
operations
combinations
specialists
isn't
designed
the
dozens of
worst
dishes,
thing.
but one stood out from the fray, a cone-shaped sandwich
Especially
named
for
the
Disney.
Castle Cone. The original fillings included moushu shrimp and mixed berries. Eisner approved the idea, and the Castle Cone was born. However, the name was changed by the Walt Disney World marketing team, and it was officially released as the Handwich sometime around 1986, with more consumer and operations-friendly fillings.
Keith, I've been dying to know, what is a Handwich? It's some
Dude,
kind
bruh,
of
we
roll
don't even know.
So you can stuff the meats inside and eat it actually like a cone.
As aforementioned, the Handwich was filled with ham and cheese, pulled barbecue chicken, roast beef and cheddar, and tuna salad. But these were just a few of the variations. There was also chicken salad, ambrosia salad, seafood salad, and taco beef. When
What is
MGM
ambrosia
Studios
salad?
opened in 1989,
What is
a
ambrosia?
unique Handwich was created for the park with a Cobb salad filling. Unfortunately, the Handwich was not the success that Eisner had hoped for. In 1990,
Oh,
the
shit.
Orlando Sentinel reported that, quote, the last we checked, the Handwich had not exactly gripped the imagination of a hungry America, let alone Orlando, let alone anyone but Michael Eisner. Retro WDW's Retro Magic event was held at the Ballroom of the Americas at the Contemporary Resort, and immediately after Brian's presentation, attendees were treated to a lunch of the future of the past with a Handwich buffet. This would not be the only reappearance of the Handwich
Handwich.
after its discontinuation in the mid-90s. In 2012, Cars Land opened at Disney California Adventure theme park, and the Cozy Cone Motel quick service spot served Handwich-style bread cones, although they were not officially Handwiches. Flavors included chicken verde and chili cone queso, and for breakfast, bacon scramble. In 2013, Disney's Hollywood Studios Min and Bill's Dockside Diner quick service stand served their own sandwich cones, but these were quickly discontinued. In 2014, another sandwich cone could be found, again at Disney's Hollywood Studios. This time, fillings included a macaroni and cheese with bacon topping cone and a Fiesta chili cheese cone. In 2017, during Epcot's 35th anniversary celebration, a retro Handwich was created, this time with a new mac and cheese with cheeseburger filling. While distinct from the original
Cheeseburger.
Handwich, this was the most intentional of the Handwich revivals, explicitly referencing the dish's predecessor. All of this is to say, the Handwich is replicable, which means...
Kevin, wait! You're not really going to recreate one of the Handwiches, are you?
No, Announcer Man. I'm going to recreate 3 of the Handwiches.
3 Handwiches? That is a journey from which you cannot return unsuccessful.
You
Come
madman.
Just one Handwich short, and you will be lost to time, just like the Handwich itself. Are you sure about this?
I love this announcer voice.
let's make some handwiches.
Amazon was definitely a step up.
No,
I went
it's
from
not.
$10.10 to
Shut up.
$17.75.
Mouth-watering meals, delectable dishes, tasty treats. No matter how scrumptious, they, like everything, will be lost to time. But unlike most of us, some will be remembered. And unlike all of us, some will be resurrected. This is Defunct Pan, where the dishes of the past return to the plate. And now your host, Kevin Perjurer, will show us how to create an old-fashioned handwich.
It's true. The sandwich of the future of the past is the present once again. Because today,
Love
we
this
will
Martha
be creating
Stewart
an
background.
old-fashioned barbecue chicken handwich. Let's start with our delicious slow-cooked barbecue chicken. First, we make our
You
sauce
had me at
with
chicken.
a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar.
You had me
followed
at
by a
barbecue. What am I
tablespoon
saying?
Of Worcestershire sauce, a 4th cup of brown sugar, and a tablespoon of olive oil. I have peeled and grated an onion, and we are going to put both the onion and the juice into our bowl. Finally, let's add 2 cups of barbecue sauce. The only barbecue sauce you will ever need, and the best barbecue sauce in the world, is Joe's Kansas City barbecue sauce. I'm going to add the whole bottle to our bowl, and now we mix. Next, we place 3 pounds of chicken breast into our slow cooker. After we wash our hands, we season. This quick spice mix that I created contains salt, pepper, paprika, cayenne pepper, and garlic powder. We can now pour our sauce over our seasoned chicken, and once again we mix. Let's place the lid on our slow cooker and cook on low heat for 7 hours or high heat for 4 hours. About 2 hours before our chicken is done cooking, we can begin making our handwich cones. Start by warming up a cup of milk in the microwave until warm, but not hot. We can then add a teaspoon of sugar, then 7 ounces of active dry yeast, and yet again, we mix. We're going to allow our yeast to activate to the side for around 5 to 10 minutes. In the meantime, we will create our flour mixture. In this bowl, we have 4 cups of all-purpose flour, and we are going to add in 3 tablespoons of castor sugar and 2 teaspoons of salt, and then we mix. We're going to make a well in the center of our mixture. Inside, we will place 2 eggs and our activated yeast mixture. We can now take a hand mixer, and we mix with a dough hook.
Bread.
After these are combined, we take a 4th cup of soft or slightly melted butter and add it to our dough. We now mix for around 6 to 7 minutes. We now place our somewhat sticky dough onto a floured surface to form it into a ball. Once we have done this, we can place it into a greased bowl, cover it completely, and allow it to sit in a slightly warm spot for 1 hour to rise. While that is rising, we can create our cone molds. We will be using printer paper and tinfoil to create these. These will be going in the oven, but do not worry, the paper will not catch fire. There's actually a great book about this which states the auto ignition point of paper right in its title. It is called 1984. We will only be baking at 400 degrees, so we are well under this mark. First, we take 2 pieces of printer paper and we lay them landscape in front of us. We take the bottom left corner and create a small fold-in like this. That right there is about right. We can now use this fold to roll our cone, making sure to keep the point at the bottom as tight as possible. We continue to hold that together as we place a piece of tinfoil on our workspace. Start at one of the corners and wrap your cone in the tinfoil. Do not worry about this excess, because we are going to just fold that into the top of our cone. And there you have it. We will have enough dough for 8 handwiches, but I will only be baking 2. 1 for me and 1 for you. So once we have finished with our cone molds, we can place them to the side. Once our dough has risen, now comes the fun part. We're going to divide our dough into 8 equal pieces and cover again with our plastic to prevent any of them from drying out. One by one, we are going to take one of these pieces and roll it out. We want to end up with a long tube, around 3 feet long. Once we have this, we can take one of our molds and, starting from the bottom, spiral our dough up the cone. Now that's looking like a sandwich. Once we have done this, we gently press our dough into the cone and pinch the tip. We now place these on a greased baking sheet. As our oven preheats to 400 degrees, we are going to give our handwich cones a light egg wash. Once our cones are prepared, we can place them in our oven for around 12 minutes. While those are cooking, our chicken should be just about done. That smells absolutely delicious. With 2 forks, we shred the chicken, and as we do this, we mix. We're going to drain only the chicken we'll be filling, as we don't want our sandwiches to be too soggy. Once we pull our cones out of the oven and allow them to cool, we can remove the mold and admire our work. Now, we take our chicken and fill our sandwich cones. And voila! A beautiful barbecue chicken
Kathy
sandwich.
could never.
I must now take a bite. Absolutely wonderful. I
Stop
could eat the whole
moaning.
thing, but I'm going to save my appetite.
I'm so
because
uncomfortable.
We have 2 more sandwiches to make.
Kevin, wait! There's still time to turn back. Just 1 is enough. If anything goes wrong and you don't complete all 3, you could get stuck in historical limbo.
Nothing can stop me from making more sandwiches. Onward.
The world cannot handle more than one
What's
sandwich.
cooking, America? Let's find out in Defunct Kitchen.
Oh my gosh.
And now, welcome your host, Kevin Perjurer.
Hey
Oh,
everyone,
I hate it.
My name is Kevin Perjurer and I make defunct meals. Today we are going to be making something from long ago. It's an old Disney Parks favorite. You might have guessed it already. It is the sandwich. This one is actually a viewer submission, so let's hear from Scott.
Hi, Kevin. I went to the Studio Catering Company at Disney MGM Studios in May 1989. Here, I tried the Cobb Salad Sandwich for $3.60. It had a mix of finely chopped lettuce, egg, bacon, tomato, turkey, avocado, and blue cheese in a French roll cone. The blue cheese dominated just a bit, which didn't bother me. But if you don't like the pungent taste of Roquefort, you might not like this.
Roquefort.
I was wondering if you could show me how to make it.
Scott, thank you so much for writing in. The sandwich is not only a forgotten food item, it is the perfect meal for many occasions. Let's say you have a daughter. She's a sweetheart, but she's a bit of an arsonist. Her principal is coming over to discuss her expulsion, and you have to cook something spectacular, or he will expel your daughter, and she will never be able to achieve the dreams that you've projected onto her. With these life-altering steaks, why not make a delicious sandwich? And I'll show you how. We're going to start with 4 strips of bacon chopped up, and we're going to place these on a wire rack, and we're going to rest that on top of a drip pan lined with tinfoil. Once you have those on the wire rack, you can place it in a 400-degree oven for around 20 minutes, but make sure to watch it.
Keep your eyes on it.
After you've washed your hands, we can open our dough. Now I'm going to take advantage of the store for this one. This is French bread dough, and we're just going to give it a little karate chop, hi-ya. And now we're just going to open it up, and we're going to split it in half, just like that, into 2 equal parts for our 2 sandwich cones. Now we're going to wrap these around one of these cones. Now what this is, it's just printer paper wrapped in tinfoil. Now we have a tutorial on our website, and you can just go to that link right there, and once you made 2 of these, we can get rolling. So let's grab one of our dough, and just like we're starting a campfire, we just go to town. We want to make this around 3 feet long, and once we've done that, you can take your tinfoil cone, and you just wrap it around the very tip, and then you spiral it on. You just keep wrapping all the way to the top, just like that. Look at that. Now we take our
He's
greased
dressed like a
bacon sheet
mother.
and we put our sandwich on, and we do
Like an
this
early
again
90s
with
mother.
Our second sandwich, and once we've got that, we can put that one on right next to it, and we can put this in our oven 400 degrees, even while the bacon is cooking just right under there. Now, while we got that cooking, I want to tell you about an incredible product. These are the Raycon Everyday E25 earbuds, and they're today's sponsor.
Oh, God.
These earbuds are the real deal. The Bluetooth pairing is seamless, it's incredibly responsive, and with 6...
No, I don't want to answer your questions, YouTube.
Salutations. My name is Kevin Perjurer, and welcome to another edition in Defunct Land. For background/context on this series, please visit thepurge.com with the link below.
Why is his voice so
Today
weird?
we will be attempting to resurrect our first non-Disney attraction, Jaws the Ride, that operated in Universal Studios Florida from 1990 to 2012. This is also our first viewer-suggested addition to the park, so thank you to Cinematic Psycho Productions for the comment. To all of you Disney fanatics that don't care about Universal Studios, stick with me, because there will be plenty of Disney history weaved throughout this story. So let's get into it. In the mid-1960s, Universal, who at the time was owned by multimedia company MCA, completely refurbished the Universal Studios tour, creating the beginning of Universal Studios Hollywood as we know it today. This put them in direct competition with other LA-based amusement park, Disneyland. As Universal Studios Hollywood continued to add additions to their park, including a Jaws encounter during the studio tour, MCA kept a close eye on Disney. When word got around that Disney was planning on operating a new theme park in Florida, MCA followed closely behind, with a new studio tour in Orlando in an attempt to attract some of the tourists that would be traveling to Walt Disney World. This began the ongoing feud between Universal Studios and Disney. I won't dive fully into the feud as I would be touching on the history of future defunct land attractions, but just to give you an idea, yeah, they're basically the same thing. So Disney MGM Studios began construction in 1985, obviously angering Universal as Disney had copied many aspects of their plan and already existing park. However, luckily for Universal and MCA, they had recently found a developer for their Orlando park. They had also found a creative partner, Steven Spielberg. That's right. If you've watched the first episode of Defunctland, you'll remember that George Lucas was heavily involved in the development of attractions for Disney at this time. And if you don't already know, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg are very close friends who found themselves in competition with one another in the late 1980s due to this feud. Universal decided not to make their Orlando park the same as their Hollywood tram tour out of fear of being accused of copying Disney. They decided to instead focus more on film-based attractions such as Confrontation and Jaws the Ride. The creative head of Universal Studios Florida was former Disney Imagineer and Steven Spielberg's college roommate, Peter Alexander. Universal had no experience creating epic attractions like Disney's, so the management was worried about the concept of the Florida park. Alexander spearheaded the ride, and Ride and Show Engineering agreed to produce it. The first version of the ride cost $30 million to make in the late 1980s, which, factoring in inflation, yeah, it was expensive. And the results
$58 million.
The original Jaws
That's
ride
too
took
much.
guests on a pontoon boat captained by a employee who would guide the boat on a tour of Amity, the town in Jaws. Then shockingly, the guests spot a
Shark! 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 Shark!
The shark would then stalk you for the rest of the ride, even
Shark,
appearing in the
shark,
boathouse that you're
shark,
hiding
shark.
out in. In the first version of the ride,
Me
at
at a
one
Gouda
point,
concert.
the robot shark would actually take a bite out of the boat and attempt to spin it. This would have been amazing, except for it almost never worked correctly. Like the robot made for the movie Jaws, the Jaws ride sharks experienced a variety of problems. First, sometimes the robot shark would not lunge out of the water to grab the boat. Second, if it did, the robot's shark teeth would sometimes damage the boat because for some reason they used real shark teeth. In the finale of
Keep
the
it like for
original
why?
ride, the skipper would shoot the shark with a grenade launcher. It would then explode and chunks of shark would fly out of the water. They would fly out of a small air cannon and then would be filtered back in and recirculated. The sharks were guided by computers and could swim at 20 feet per second. It was an impressive ride, but did it work as they had planned? No. The answer is no.
Not even a little
I
bit.
should go for a run today, but it looks like it could rain.
Save on epic rain
You
jackets
should
at
shut
Sierra.
the hell up.
As we stroll through the streets of Amity, this little New England village seems like any seaside resort in summer. Young
This
men
place
thronging
looks
around
nice.
The shooting gallery, people basking in the sun, crowds taking photographs of a great white shark. A great white shark. But this is a
This looks
movie
fine.
set, and this is where Jaws turns an elemental fear of the water into screaming terror. But today the sea is calm. It's a good day for a boat ride.
I've never seen so many people so excited to be attacked by a
Disney
shark.
MGM Studios opened on May 1st, 1989, and a year later, Universal Studios Florida opened on June 7th, 1990. Opening day was a star-studded event. Celebrities such as Sylvester Stallone, Steven Spielberg, and Bill Cosby were in attendance.
Oof.
The opening was a huge success for people that like to watch everything go wrong.
I hope this cuts. This is a lot thicker than what we rehearsed with.
The power went out just hours before the opening, many of the attraction's automation systems weren't operating, and Jaws had to shut down due to a thunderstorm after a few hours of operation. Steven Spielberg was rumored to be stuck on the ride during this time. The following few days of opening did not go much better. Jaws was still not operating correctly. One skipper was quoted as saying, "Imagine explosions over there." These problems would continue with the ride. At times, Universal would inform guests in the morning that Jaws would not be open that day, regardless of whether it was or not. Universal tried to stay
It's incredible
positive
that
about
they
the
made
ride,
it
but it became
an
apparent that it
entire
wasn't operating properly.
ride
On
about
top
a
of this,
shark,
they
and
would
yet
be faced
it's
with a lawsuit
its
as
one
during
weakness
voyage, a
is
guest
water
fell off
damage.
the boat and into the water with Jaws. He was on a family trip with his children that were obviously mortified that their father would be eaten. Worse, he fell in one of the 10 feet deep areas where the sharks are held. The other areas of the ride were
Ooh.
only 4 feet deep. If you haven't figured it out already, this means that he was incredibly close to the mechanics of the ride. He even recalled that the shark was swimming right toward him. When the employees managed to get him back on the boat, the other guests clapped, thinking it was all just part of the show. He sued Universal for $1 million. This, along with the fact that the ride shut down almost daily, helped Universal come to the conclusion that it was time to drastically change the ride. The original version of Jaws closed after only 2.5 months of operation. It is safe to say that Universal and MCA were mad. They sued Ride and Show Engineering for not designing the ride properly. Ride and Show claimed that their handiwork was not at fault, and that Universal did not give them enough time. Ride and Show even said that they were looking forward to the case, so that they could prove that Universal messed up and not them. They later settled out of court, with Ride and Show commenting, "Basically, Universal didn't have any experience with a ride like this. If we had built something like this for Disneyland, Disneyland maintenance would have taken it over and made it work." Oh no, they didn't. Universal was now determined to get Jaws operating correctly as soon as possible, and after more delays and more problems, they finally settled on a 1993 opening date. They hired Totally Fun Company to redesign the ride, a company started by Peter Alexander. They also hired a variety of contractors to complete the many different aspects of the attraction to ensure that it was done correctly the second time around. The new story incorporated elements from both Jaws and Jaws 2. In the new ride, the
Shark! 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 Shark!
would not bite the boat or be blown to pieces, but there would instead be a gas explosion, and the shark would be killed after it bit a high voltage wire, such as in the end of Jaws 2. This was Peter Alexander's final suggestion before he left the project to go to the other end of the park and produce shows for Nickelodeon Studios. The fire scene would have to be impressive, and the pyrotechnics testing it purposefully designed it so that the guests could feel the heat without getting burned. They definitely accomplished this, as guests regularly complained that they had been burned by the fire, mostly by those that had already had sunburns from a day at the park.
Stupid
The main
ass.
issue with the original attraction was that the water made it difficult for the robot sharks to go from a complete standstill to lunging out of the water. Universal decided to hire Oceaneer International, a company specializing in products that assist in deep-sea exploration, to build the sharks. They were able to accomplish this, although the
Nice.
detail on the sharks does not match that of the original attraction. But who cares about details if you can't see them because the ride is always closed? An interesting aspect of the remodeling was the testing phase, because in order to view changes made to the attraction, the technicians would have to take a round trip on the boat as they could not go in reverse. This means that they were taking trip after trip through the ride to witness minor changes. With all of these contractors on board and $40 million later, Universal was able to complete the second version of the attraction
$40
for a soft
million.
opening in 1993,
That's
using
too
the
much.
term technical rehearsals until 1994.
It's back and better than ever.
Get 1 to 2 day
Judge
prescription
the
delivery
ring.
or pick it up now at CVS. Healthy.
Thank you, CVS. I appreciate it.
No survivors. And you thought this only happened in the movies. That's what I thought. So catch Jaws at Universal Studios. One ride and you're hooked.
So the final version of the attraction went like this. As you waited in line, you were taken through the boathouses of Amity, including TV screens playing WJWS 13. It had a lot of different programming with numerous references to the film and other movies as well. Once you were done waiting in line, you board one of Captain Jake's boats with the skipper to tour the island of Amity. You take off with your tour guide explaining the shark attacks of 1974 that were later turned into a hit movie. They also point out the houses of some of the characters of the Jaws movies, until suddenly they get a call of distress from Amity 3. The skipper tries to see what is going on and finds Amity 3 sinking. Then the guests see
Shark! Shark! Shark!
Shark! Shark! Shark! Shark!
The skipper pulls out the grenade launcher, not realizing that it is actually
Me chanting
loaded at
while I'm
first,
in the
and
water.
fires at the monster, missing. The skipper misses a second time before hiding in a boathouse to wait for Chief Brody. The shark tries to break in, and the skipper struggles to escape, but does just in time. Chief Brody tells the skipper that he'll be there in 10 minutes. The skipper replies with the now famous line, "We'll be shark bait in 10 minutes," which doesn't actually make sense since technically they are already shark bait. Anyways, the shark comes back and the skipper misses with the grenade launcher once again, this time accidentally igniting a nearby gas dock. The skipper then explains that they are going to unload the guests onto a fishing dock in an attempt to save them. However, the shark appears once again, but this time it accidentally bites down on a high voltage power cable, frying it. The guests smell the roasted shark and it makes one final lunge at the boat, but the skipper is able to kill it with the grenade launcher. Everyone cheers as they are returned safely to Amber. All in all, the shark appears 5 times on the starboard side and only twice on the port side, so you were luckier to be placed on the starboard side. So that was Jaws the Ride, but hold on because its history is not over just yet.
But wait,
a few
there's
notable
more.
events took place with the ride after its second release. First, every year the attraction was drained, and the Department of Environmental Protection was tipped that oil and other toxins from the ride were being irresponsibly disposed of, which essentially just meant that they had to change their fuel type and do a lot of paperwork. In 2004, hurricanes caused gas prices to increase in Florida to the point that it was too expensive to operate the Jaws ride, thus causing it to be open only infrequently and seasonally from 2005 to 2007. Also, the attraction was refurbished constantly to ensure that the ride operated correctly. So why was it closed? Unlike other defunct land entries, this one is pretty simple. Harry Potter. The franchise was going to and did save Universal's attendance numbers.
Damn it,
and
JK.
Jaws was replaced with the Diagon Alley attraction, Harry Potter and the Escape from Gringotts. While the attraction at Universal is gone, there is still a Jaws operating at Universal Studios Japan, and the short scene during the tram tour is still operating in Hollywood. So that is the history of Jaws the Ride. There are a few more interesting anecdotes to the attraction that I decided weren't relevant enough to discuss here, but if you would like to read more on Jaws, visit the links below. One is to themeparktourist.com, which is where I got the majority of my research for extraterrestrial and Jaws, and the other is to a Reddit AMA by a skipper who worked on the ride. I recommend checking both of these out. As always, to learn more about where the remains of Jaws are today, how I'm going to get them back, and where I will place them in defunct land, please visit thepurge.com with the link below. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and don't forget to comment, share, and subscribe.
Thanks, man.
That's Emily.
Is it weird that I find Sebastian Stan incredibly
Hey, so
attractive
I've given this
as
a lot of thought,
Tommy
and
Lee
I think your
Jones?
next video should be on a really classic Disney attraction, like the Skyway, Rocket to the Moon, or the original version of Star Tours.
Well, actually, I was thinking about covering one of my favorite attractions, Stitch's Great Escape. I loved Lilo and Stitch growing up and always thought that ride was a blast, not to mention the history and drama surrounding that ride is fascinating. I'm probably in the minority, but man, I've always really enjoyed that attraction and the character of Stitch, so I would love to explore it.
Quinn, you can't say Stitch's name 3 times in one sentence or else he'll— Our Yester World, Stitch is here.
Oh god, he's fucking dead. Oh. Says audio returns in 12 seconds. Because I'm guessing that, Disney didn't like them using their music.
When you think of Disney animation from the early 2000s, chances are one of the first movies to come to mind is 2002's Lilo and Stitch, a film that managed to connect with audiences of all ages due in part to its rather mature themes for an animated movie at the time, showing a young girl affected by the death of her parents, a struggling sister doing her best to meet the standards of a well-meaning social worker, and of course our title character Stitch, aka Experiment 626, a creature coming into a situation that he doesn't understand while trying to make some sense of what it means to be part of a family. And for a movie primarily about an alien, Lilo and Stitch was Disney's most personal and human story yet. The film was also a box office success, more than tripling its budget and becoming one of Disney's most merchandisable properties in years, and with that combination in mind, it seemed like only a matter of time before the franchise would make its way into the theme parks, but what no one expected was for it to happen so fast. In November of 2002, only a few short months following the release of the film, rumors began to surface that Stitch would soon be taking over the Magic Kingdom's extraterrestrial alien encounter, an attraction that had proved to be a little too intense for young children, and while the ride did have many hardcore fans, Disney had been looking for an opportunity to replace Alien Encounter with something a little more family-friendly, and on October 10th of 2003, Disney officially announced that Alien Encounter would be replaced by the forthcoming Stitch's Great Escape, and only 2 days later, Alien Encounter was permanently closed. Reactions to the announcement were mixed to say the least, as in addition to upset fans of the original Alien Encounter, many fans of the park did not believe Lilo and Stitch to be a franchise with the longevity of other Disney classics. Regardless, Disney moved forward with the concept, blocking off access to the show building while the attraction was under construction. During this time, Imagineers were faced with the challenge of creating an attraction under very tight development constraints. Disney wanted the attraction to be up and running in less than 1 year, and had already publicly slated Stitch's Great Escape to open in summer of 2004 before construction had even began. Not only that, due to a very limited budget, Imagineers were forced to repurpose as many assets from the original Alien Encounter as possible. Faced with these challenges, the attraction ended up missing the summer opening date entirely, and work on the attraction continued well into fall, leaving parkgoers curious as to when they'd finally be able to experience what Imagineers have been up to for themselves. Ultimately, on October 12th of 2004, an email was sent out to Walt Disney World pass holders, inviting them to special exclusive previews of Stitch's Great Escape during the first week of November, before the attraction would open to the public on November 16th, during which Disney announced that they would be hosting a very special event to celebrate the ride's grand opening. And while many did not know what to expect, the grand opening ceremony was certainly one of Disney's most interesting creative decisions. Guests arriving to the Magic Kingdom on opening morning were greeted by a large inflatable Stitch, and as they made their way up Main Street would pass by signs warning them of a certain blue menace that was wreaking havoc in the park. They could also spot groups of law enforcement searching high and low for the little guy. Upon approaching the castle on opening morning, guests would have a hard time not instantly noticing that something was not quite right, as Stitch had evidently covered the entire castle in toilet paper, as well as having put his graffiti skills to good use, spray painting "Stitch is King" to the left of the castle's archway. The castle would only remain that way for a single day, but despite its very short lifespan, is something that Disney fans like to talk about almost as much as the attraction the castle was decorated for. During the morning's opening ceremony, Cobra Bubbles, making his only appearance as a walk-around character to date, warns the crowd that Stitch is on the loose and that any sighting should be immediately reported to the United Galactic Federation. After this, the standard opening celebration began, although parkgoers with a keen eye could spot Stitch bouncing around from turret to turret high up on the castle. Before the celebration wrapped up, Stitch would crash the ceremony, bringing with him a massive group of Elvis impersonators before being captured by authorities and escorted off the stage, although he apparently was not held for long, as Stitch could be spotted back on the castle at various times throughout the rest of the day, in addition to giving interviews for local news in an alternate costume directly after the ceremony. With the opening celebration out of the way, guests were now free to make their way over to Tomorrowland and experience Stitch's Great Escape for the first time.
Oh dear! Ah, much better. Stitch has taken over. So strap yourselves in for Disney's most experience. Check out Stitch's Great Escape, new at the Magic Kingdom.
My goodness, that's not yours, is it?
Upon entering the show building, riders would be given a very short security briefing
as much as this ride is stupid, I do enjoy the promo
and that their job was to guard any prisoners until they had reformed.
Trailers that they had.
After this very brief pre-show, guests would move on to the next area of the ride, where it quickly became very apparent just how much of Alien Encounter had been repurposed for Stitch's Great Escape. The Alien Encounter pre-show featured one robot animatronic at a center desk with 2 teleportation tubes to his left and right, as well as 2 animatronics of the character Skippy inside the teleportation tubes. The Stitch's
Not
Great Escape pre-show
Skippy.
also featured one robot animatronic at a center desk with 2 teleportation tubes to his left and right, as well as 2 Skippy animatronics inside the teleportation tubes. However, the pre-show's narrative was of course entirely different, with the center animatronic quickly introducing himself as Sergeant C4703 BK2704-90210. He explains to the audience that there are 2 types of prisoners that we'd be dealing with on that day: low threat level 1 prisoners and moderately threatening level 2 prisoners. We are then introduced to the original Skippy, who has been incarcerated for jaywalking. Poor Skippy. After
Not
this, an alert comes
Skippy.
in on the screen above, informing the audience that another level 1 prisoner would be teleported down, although this one was coming in for a much more heinous crime.
We've had another situation in the Galactic Federation Bakery. Not the donut guy again. Yep. Kind of sucking the goop out of all the jelly wormhole donuts.
This is followed up by an admittedly very cool special effect, as this so-called donut guy is teleported off of the TV screen and into the physical teleportation tube in front of the guests, revealing himself to actually be none other than the other deformed Skippy animatronic from Alien Encounter, although this time is covered in green jelly. Things then go horribly wrong as the audience is warned by Gantu that the prison has an incoming level 3 prisoner who is described as being highly dangerous. Guests are then directed into the high security teleportation center, which was the same theater in the round used in Alien Encounter, before seating themselves as a countdown begins and being locked in place by the descending shoulder bars. After this, the main show began as the high security prisoner, Experiment 626, was teleported in, revealing to guests what was by far the most impressive part of the attraction. Stitch's 39-inch tall animatronic was one of the most complex in the world at the time, and he was accompanied by 2 plasma cannons that would track Stitch as he moved, with each cannon weighing over 1,600 pounds. The story of the main show was very simple, as after teleporting in, Stitch immediately begins spitting on the audience to confuse the plasma cannons, which, just like in the original film, have the fatal flaw of tracking any of Stitch's DNA, including his spit. This causes the plasma cannons to fire wildly, killing the power and plunging the theater into total darkness, allowing Stitch to escape. During this relatively brief stint in total darkness, guests would hear Stitch scurry around the theater through the speakers in their headrests, and feel Stitch jumping on their shoulders, an effect that was achieved by the seat shoulder bars shaking rapidly, and would also hear Stitch steal and eat a chili dog before letting out a large belch, which would cause hidden scent spritzers to blast a very unpleasant smell into guests' faces.
Yeah.
Give me back my chili dog! My chili dog! Mine! Give me back my chili dog!
Oh, man.
Little blue
Needs more onions.
Stitch could also tickle the heads of guests during the darkness, which was done using small air hoses. The emergency power is then restored, and Stitch would continue to taunt the cannons, causing them to again fire haphazardly in every direction before they are shut down for good. Shortly after this, Stitch manages to hijack the teleportation system, with his animatronic reappearing for a short time before teleporting out of the theater and being shown to land back on Earth, more specifically the Magic Kingdom, being shown riding on the Astro Orbiter. This original ending had 2 separate variants and would show Stitch on the Astro Orbiter during the day if you went on the attraction during daylight, or show him on the same ride at night if you went during the evening. The show would then come to a close, and as guests made their way out of the theater, would pass by various wanted posters for different aliens before exiting into either Mickey's Star Traders or Merchant of Venus. Not go over very well with the vast majority of parkgoers, with some publications going as far as to call the ride the worst attraction Disney had ever created. Common complaints included the obnoxious chili cheese burp that made many guests nauseous, the very obvious reuse of many of the main set pieces from Alien Encounter, the shoulder bars and seats proving to be very uncomfortable, and overall just the lack of the Disney standard care not being put into the project. Some guests felt the plot of the ride was very weak as well, and many aspects of the show just did not line up with the plot of the movie, although that could of course be attributed to creative liberties taken while creating a standalone experience like Stitch's Great Escape. Overall, very few people had anything positive to say about the ride when it was first released, and most felt it was vastly inferior to what had preceded it. The Orlando Sentinel had an absolutely brutal take on the ride, saying if Stitch were truly alive, he would get his revenge for this. He would snarl, stick his tongue up his nose, and then wrap his jaw firmly around Michael Eisner's head. His sad tale is a microcosm of what is going on at Disney, where prices are up and creativity is down. Ouch. These complaints were never addressed and remained a very common issue for guest relations during the ride's entire run. Disney did make a few minor changes to Stitch's Great Escape in March of 2005, adding artificial dialogue of various guests into the periods of darkness just to help the audience better follow what was happening, and changed the end of the ride entirely. In this ending, instead of being shown riding the Astro Orbiter, Stitch lands on Cinderella's castle, leading to a pretty interesting interaction.
Hello? Cinderella, your prince is here.
You're not my prince. Bye!
Bye!
The ride then remained unchanged for the rest of the decade, and as the parks rolled into the 2010s, parkgoers began to wonder why Stitch's Great Escape remained open. The attraction had been unpopular from the very beginning, and as the years passed, the attraction became one of the least populated in the park. Guests were also starting to notice that the ride was not being maintained, as many of the speakers had stopped working throughout the years, and by 2010 the ride had begun to break down mid-show frequently. Finally, on October 2nd of 2016, Disney announced that Stitch's Great Escape would enter seasonal operation, only opening during select dates during the park's busiest times.
Seasonal.
The attraction remained in seasonal operation through January 6th of 2018, when without warning, Stitch's Great Escape played what would become its final ever showing. Disney officials had stated that the ride would remain on a seasonal operation schedule throughout 2018, but in October of the very same year, pictures surfaced online showing that the entire attraction, including the pre-show area, had been completely dismantled, seemingly signaling the end of an attraction that few would miss. As of 2019, Stitch's Alien Encounter character meeting inhabits the pre-show area of what was once Stitch's Great Escape. This meet and greet has been in place since 2017, when the ride was still operating on a seasonal schedule, but has now outlived the main attraction. What will permanently take the place of Stitch's Great Escape is unknown, and with no official word from Disney, the future of the show building remains unclear. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel before you leave, and we'll see you here next time on Yesterworld.
Hello, I am Kevin Perjurer, and welcome to the first video in my new series, Defunctland, where I will be creating my very own amusement park using attractions that are no longer operating. For background/context on this series, please visit thepurge.com with the link below. Today we will be attempting to resurrect Disney World's past attraction, extraterrestrial Alien Encounter. This show, found exclusively in Magic Kingdom's Tomorrowland from 1994 to 2003, has a long and fascinating backstory, so let's get right into it. When Michael Eisner became the CEO of Disney in 1984, he wanted to be more personal than the company's past executives. He attempted to do this by beginning his transition with a tour of Disney's parks. He invited his teenage son, Breck, to come along with him. After a tour of Disneyland, Breck expressed the sentiment that the park lacked a cool factor. This worried Eisner, and he began conducting exit surveys to
That's what happens when you bring your teenage son to your mega $1 million corporation.
Thrill rides, but instead of going the typical approach of adding roller coasters, he decided that he wanted to add exciting and intense shows to the parks. This is when the George Lucas that everyone loves, not the George Lucas that everyone hates, entered the picture. He began collaborating with Eisner to add attractions like Star Tours and the Indiana Jones Stunt Spectacular. This gave Eisner the idea to incorporate another sci-fi movie into the parks, Ridley Scott's Alien, because I know when I think of Disney, I think of this.
Gross. And that's why I never watched the Alien series.
I've been everywhere, man. I've been.
That this was an unorthodox choice for an attraction at a Disney
Queen.
park. The concept was, believe it or not, more terrifying than the theme. The Alien ride was to be like Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger spin, but instead of shooting laser beams at Zurg, you're in pitch black darkness shooting shotguns at murderous aliens. The head Imagineers were appalled by the idea, and they convinced Eisner that this would be a horrific addition to Tomorrowland. This angered him, but he decided to give up on the ride. However, a small group of young Imagineers weren't ready to let the idea go, and they found a solid excuse to pitch it again. An attraction called Mission to Mars was in dire need of retooling. Mission to Mars opened in 1975, replacing the similar attraction Flight to the Moon. Flight to the Moon, originally named Rocket to the Moon, was one of the original Disneyland attractions, and all three variations of the show were very basic. Guests would enter the theater, which had a circular design with screens on the floor and the ceiling, simulating a trip to outer space. By the 1990s, it was viewed by guests as quite boring. The new Imagineers hoped that they could replace Mission to Mars with a show starring Xenomorph, the alien from Alien. Eisner loved the idea, but the head Imagineers did not. The head Imagineers decided to go to George Lucas, who agreed that Alien was not a good fit for the park.
Please, for the love of
Although it could have
God,
just
tell
been the
him
fact
that
he
it
was
doesn't
jealous
work.
of the film's success. You know, he gets like that sometimes.
There's no way to know what's going to happen. You know, we're never going to beat Titanic. Nobody can.
So Lucas convinced Eisner that he should drop the Alien tie-in and make the attraction less frightening. Eisner told the small team of Imagineers to continue with the attraction with the help of Lucas, but without the use of the franchise. This original attraction would be called Extraterrestrial Alien Encounter. In 1994, test audiences experienced the show for the first time, and they were horrified. Many complained that it was too scary, but Eisner didn't agree. He was concerned that small flaws in the show, such as plot points and timing, were holding it back from being as scary as it could be. The attraction closed after a few weeks of testing
Eisner
for
just goes,
adjustments,
"I do
but
not
Eisner
see it."
essentially gave up on the project 6 months into the retooling for unknown reasons. Nevertheless, he allowed Extraterrestrial Alien Encounter to open.
Scott, the Magic Kingdom has a whole new land for you to visit. It's the all-new Tomorrowland. Hold on to your seat as Scott gets set for a chilling visit with an extraterrestrial.
Fear not, people of the future. We are simply visitors from your past. We are friendly, hi, and we come looking for scary attractions. We do.
Is this
I
Germa?
miss when Disney World promos were hosted by drunk dads instead of annoying kids.
Hi, where are you from? London, England. All right, so you are an alien. Yes.
Man, this guy is trashed.
I know you're all a little nervous, but I'm sure there's nothing to worry about.
I promise I'm a professional.
It's all right, so just this is part of the chair. Hopefully. All right, everybody, here comes Mr. Alien.
Alright, nothing to worry about here, just move along. He does sound drunk. Oh no!
I mean, it's, you know, it's great, but it's not good. There's something loose in here.
It's not good.
It's over there. Sorry, it's over there. No, I'm not gonna tell you what happened, but you don't want to miss it, cause it's not gonna miss you. Anybody seen my shoe?
So the attraction was broken into 3 parts. Guests enter the Tomorrowland Interplanetary
Is he
Convention
okay,
Center, greeted
like,
by a
mentally?
video showcasing some upcoming showcases at the center. These are quite humorous. Mission to Mars, History or Hoax, referencing the previous attraction Mission to Mars while also taking a shot at NASA truthers. Championship Pet Show, with the tagline, "Because when it comes to your space pet, what goes down must not come up." And the Walt Disney Company's Pan-Galactic Stockholders Meeting. Then XS Tech is introduced as the current holder of the convention space. The video has an introduction by the company's president, L.C. Clench, portrayed by Jeffrey Jones. That detail becomes quite important later.
After all,
if something can't be done with excess, then it shouldn't be done at all.
Clench.
This video is quite eerie, and white noise is pumped into the room to add to the effect. The next area is a demo hosted by a robot named Sir, short for Simulated Intelligence Robotic. He shows the audience an example of XS Tech's teleportation technology, the focus of the main show they are about to see.
No, you may not get out. You're a lucky volunteer.
During the 6 months in between the soft open and the grand opening, some parts of the pre-show were tweaked to be more sinister in an attempt to scare children away before the real horror. This is most likely done in this section. Sir decides to test the technology on a cute alien named Skippy. Sir tells Skippy that he is going to teleport him across the room. This has some pretty gruesome results.
Phase 1 of the process has begun. Disintegration into molecular components. And here's the little skipper now. Oh, shut up, Scruffy. You're not burned. You've just got a healthy glow.
Now comes time for the main show, which is difficult to describe. Special restraints were added to the Mission to Mars seats that enhance the experience. The restraints lower and a video begins on the screen attached to the walls around the room. 2 excess tech employees begin to introduce the demonstration, but are interrupted by Clench, still voiced by Jeffrey Jones, still important later, who claims that he doesn't want to teleport someone in the audience, but instead himself.
Yes, very.
Hello, everyone. I recalculated our plan. You see, if we bring one of you here, well, just get to meet one of you. However, if I'm teleported to Earth, I can meet all of you, shake each hand, and personally answer all your questions about the wonders of Excess. I'll be with you in just a moment.
Check this shit out.
Prepare yourselves for an unforgettable encounter.
During the process, however, a mistake is made, and an alien from a foreign planet is transported into the room instead. The alien breaks out of the teleportation tube, and the power surge causes the lights to go black. Certain special effects enhance the attraction's experience. For one, each chair has surrounded sound speakers that assist in visualizing the location of the alien in the dark. Also, water is misted on the audience to simulate the creature's saliva, or excess blood, as he eats the employees. The final main show has some more changes that weren't in the original version. For instance, many audiences didn't realize that the alien had the ability to fly, so dialogue was added to make it more clear.
Spinlock, since when does Clench have wings?
Wink. Also, Eisner noticed that the audience was screaming over integral plot details, so the ride's pace was changed and this line was added.
People of Earth, quiet! Listen to me, please! Don't scream! If you remain perfectly quiet, it probably won't eat you.
The experience ends with
He
the
noticed
alien
that
being
people were
captured,
screaming,
appearing
so
in the
he
tube
added
one
more
final time
dialogue to
before the
stifle
shield
their
bear
screams.
The house
That is
lights
the most
come on and
capitalist
guests
shit I've
exit
ever
the area,
heard.
And that was extraterrestrial alien encounter. So what is there now? Well, in 2004, it was replaced by Stitch's Great Escape, essentially a kid-friendly version of Alien Encounter. Instead of the alien licking you and eating people, Stitch burps in your face. Many fans of Alien Encounter despised this ride, and it never became truly popular among anyone. In fact, in September 2016, it was announced that the attraction would become seasonal only, as opposed to daily as it had been for 12 years. So why was it closed? Well, no one really knows, but there are some good guesses out there. Most obviously, the experience was absolutely terrifying, and many guests complained that it was inappropriate for the Magic Kingdom. Also, Lilo and Stitch was a huge hit in 2002, so the change makes sense from a marketing standpoint when you consider that Alien Encounter didn't have a movie tie-in, and there had recently been a welcome addition of a cartoon alien to Disney's character lineup. Perhaps the most interesting reason for its closure is Jeffrey Jones. Yes, now that is important. He stars in the footage throughout the attraction as Clench. In 2002, one year before Alien Encounter's closure, Jones was arrested for child pornography and luring and photographing an underage boy. This is a huge no-no for Disney. They don't like to be involved with sex offenders, and I don't blame them. This is
Yeah,
speculated as
no.
one of the reasons Alien Encounter was
That's not
missed.
okay.
So that is the history of extraterrestrial Alien Encounter.
What a fucking
Click on the link
scumbag.
below if you're interested in learning where the remains of Alien Encounter are today, how I'm going to get them back, and where I will place it in Defunct Land. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and don't forget to comment, share, and subscribe.
We're the bad guys, the villains of every story.
If you want to stay out of jail, you need to go good.
Hey, look, it's a cat stuck in a tree.
What does your heart tell you to do?
Eat it?
No, I want you to
Smack it. Skin it.
On June 15th, 1959, Disneyland
Eat
Park
the
celebrated
cat.
its first major expansion with a television special hosted by Walt Disney himself. The star-studded event was billed as the second opening of Disneyland, a true spectacle. Among its viewers were 4 men, huddled in a small motel room in Wakefield, Massachusetts. They were as impressed as they were disappointed. All of them had been at the park 4 years prior for its grand opening. All of them had played a major role in the park's development, and all 4 were now on the other side of the country, pulling 14-hour days on their own theme park project that would be less impressive and visited by less people. In that moment, all but one of them wished they were back at Disneyland. Once the special was over, they turned off the TV, cracked open some beers, and played a few rounds of poker to get their minds where their bodies already were, away from Anaheim. C.V. Wood was a hustler at best and a con man at worst. He was born on December 17, 1920, in a small town in Oklahoma, although he would often claim that he was from Texas, which he had moved to around the age of 8. His father worked for the Santa Fe Railroad during the height of the Great Depression, but Wood resented the poverty of his youth, so he rarely mentioned it. Wood would claim that he had a degree in engineering from the University of Oklahoma, but there is no proof of this, and many close to him doubted the accuracy of the claim. Despite this, Wood was able to land multiple engineering jobs just by saying he was qualified and hoping that no one checked, which they did not. Even his own name, CV, was not free of Wood's fabrications. CV stood for Cornelius Vanderbilt Wood. Some say it stood for Commodore Vanderbilt Wood, but if someone asked him, his name was C for nothing, V for nothing Wood. He preferred Woody anyways. Woody sold his mistruths and exaggerations with a cartoonish Texas accent and a showman's personality. His biggest fear in life was returning to poverty, and his greatest goal was prominence. He had learned to play life like a poker game. Woody wasn't dealt a good hand, so he learned to bluff, and no one had called him on it. Woody eventually went to work for the Stanford Research Institute, an economic development firm who in 1953 was hired by Walt and Roy Disney to help in the construction of Walt's amusement park. Harrison Buzz Price, an economist at Stanford, and Woody were tasked with finding a location for the park, as well as researching many of the logistics of operating such a business. Woody stepped into his role effortlessly. He casually chatted with landowners and leaked fake leads to the press so no one knew where Walt was intending to purchase land. He was equal parts charming and manipulative. Woody and Buzz Price also conducted possibly the most thorough assessment of amusement parks at the time, and soon C.V. Wood was a qualified expert in his field, more qualified than he had ever been as an engineer. In April 1954, with construction on the park set to begin, Roy Disney asked Wood to leave the Stanford Research Institute and join Disneyland full-time as its general manager and executive vice president. It also made him the park's first employee. He was expected to stay at least through the construction and the first year of operation. Growing up, Woody had developed a close-knit group of friends, which nicknamed themselves the Bombers, after a World War I film that they had watched. The Bombers remained friends into their adulthood, and constantly hired one another onto their projects.
That bodes well.
After obtaining his position at Disneyland, Woody did not hesitate in hiring many of his childhood friends and other acquaintances. One bomber, Earl Shelton, would become Disneyland's site manager. One of Wood's former bosses, Fred Schumacher, who had helped develop the 1939 New York World's Fair, would be brought on as a park executive. A former co-worker of Wood's, Van Arsdale France, would join Disneyland to train the park's employees. Joe Fowler, a retired Navy admiral that Wood had worked with while at SRI, was brought on to oversee the construction of the Mark Twain riverboat. It was as if Woody was planning a coup, and Walt grew suspicious of his intentions. Woody was a man that was always moving forward, climbing the ladder, and being Disneyland's general manager, there was nowhere else for him to go. Walt tended to resent the suits within his organization, as they often limited his creative visions. But Walt soon learned that Wood was on another level. He was willing to do or say anything for the sale. However,
But it was a
as
different
uncomfortable
kind
as Walt
of
was
suit.
with Woody's business practices,
A scummier
Roy
one.
needed him, especially when it came to securing sponsors for the park. As construction continued, tensions between Walt and Woody rose through a series of incidents. Wood was frustrated by Walt's attention to detail with the park, believing that it was unnecessary. At one point, Wood approached Walt about a raise in the throes of construction. Walt turned him down.
Oh, God.
Disneyland was running out of funds quickly, and Walt was offended by Wood's audacity. Woody, still believing he deserved a higher pay and now feeling insulted by Walt, secretly set up a series of kickbacks with small vendors who wanted into Disneyland.
My pen flew
On top
across
of
my
this,
room.
Walt would blame Woody for much of the chaos of Disneyland's opening, referred to as Black Sunday. Walt believed that the lack of crowd control and the many non-operating attractions was the fault of the park's manager. Once Disneyland was open and deemed a success, Woody, in his pursuit of fame, tried to inch himself into the spotlight. When Vice President Richard Nixon was given the key to Disneyland, Wood was the one who presented it. In November of 1955, just a few months after Disneyland's opening, Walt debuted the Mickey Mouse Club Circus just outside the park, which Wood was firmly against. After the circus failed to attract guests, Wood suggested that they make changes, which prompted Walt to respond with, quote, "God damn you, this is my circus." Roy was constantly intervening between the two, but from Wood's perspective, he often had to mediate between Walt and Roy. Perhaps Wood's most suspicious move while at Disneyland was the way in which he courted Ron Miller, Walt's son-in-law, at one point convincing Miller that Walt was irrational in his plans for the park, almost as if to draw more of the Disneyland team to his side. Walt might have felt threatened by Wood and the group of followers that he was acquiring within his own organization, fearing that he would be betrayed with Disneyland, as he had with Oswald the Lucky Rabbit and Universal, or with the strike in his own studio. Whether it was Wood's manipulation, Walt's paranoia, or a mix of both remains unclear, but the series of incidents led to Wood's firing in January of 1956. Woody was out of Disneyland, but he did not intend to leave the amusement park business. While he might have lost the hand, he was leaving with an ace up his sleeve.
Who the hell are you?
After his departure from Disney, Wood would form Marco Engineering Incorporated to build other theme parks throughout the United States. The design firm was ingenious, as many wealthy entrepreneurs and real estate investors were striving to copy Disneyland's success. Wood used his time at Disneyland as his main selling point, and recruited many Disneyland employees away from Walt and to Marco. The firm's first major project came in 1957, with a park to be named Magic Mountain in Golden, Colorado. Magic Mountain was planned to be an educational theme park based on Colorado history, with an Indian village and western
Why am
town.
I so
There was also
yawny?
to be a futuristic city of Mars and a fairy tale castle, likely drawing inspiration from a source unrelated to Colorado history. The park would only be constructed partially, with many of the original plans scrapped. After Magic Mountain, Marco would design Pleasure Island in Wakefield, Massachusetts, another park with more than a few similarities to Disneyland. Some even called it the Disneyland of the Northeast. However, the park to truly hold the label, the Disneyland of the East, would be Wood's next project. Van France, who had left Disneyland to work with Wood once again, recalled finishing work on Pleasure Island's first season. Wood had already left the project to pitch a new park to New York. Wood told France to meet him in Manhattan. When he arrived at Wood's hotel room, Woody simply pointed at the table. On top of it sat a check for $13 million. With little more than his Texas charm and Disneyland on his resume, Woody had sold a theme park to the wealthy elite of New York City. The park was to be named Freedomland USA. The goal of the park was to, quote, tell the whole American story in one vast area shaped like our country's map and segmented into states.
Oh no.
Around 80 acres would be required for the US-shaped park, compared to Disneyland's 60 acres. Knowing that finding that much land in the densely populated New York City would be difficult, Wood pitched the project to Webb & Knapp, a real estate firm run by famous developer William Zeckendorf, who had invested in Magic Mountain and Pleasure Island. Zeckendorf was a titan, overseeing the largest real estate empire at the time, but even he was not immune to Wood's charm. Impressively, Webb & Knapp owned an empty plot of land big enough to hold the park and then some, 205 acres of marshland in the Bronx, along the bank of the Hudson
In the Bronx,
River. The land
Jesus.
not used for the park would contain a parking lot for 7,200 cars and the Freedomland Inn, the park's hotel. Zeckendorf agreed to lease the swampy plot in the Bronx for Wood's park, and Freedomland had secured its land. Wood recruited investors to the project, including many of those that had invested in Pleasure Island. These investors formed a company called the International Recreation Corporation, or IRC, which would act as Freedomland's parent company. Wood's park would cost $65 million, compared to Disneyland's $17 million. This was in part because the land was expensive to lease, and because construction was more expensive in New York City. But Wood's ambitions for the park, which he saw as being a bigger, better Disneyland, also inflated the price. The $65 million
Because he's a
figure
petty
was also
bitch.
likely an exaggeration for the purpose of promotion. The park was designed to entertain 90,000 visitors on peak days, and 5 million guests per year were projected. The park planned to hold a groundbreaking ceremony on July 4th, 1959, but it was delayed until August 26th.
In September, it was announced that Fred Schumacher, who Woody had brought on as an executive at Disneyland, would serve as Freedomland's vice president and general manager, the same roles Woody had held at Disneyland. Other Disney people included Cliff Walker, the lead designer on the Jungle Cruise, who would be the director of operations at Freedomland. Earl Shelton, Woody's childhood friend and Disneyland site manager, would be an executive at Freedomland. Van France would continue with macro engineering, training Freedomland's employees as he had done at Disneyland. And these were just a few of the many Disneyland employees that would contribute to Freedomland. By the time the park was under construction, plans for the 1964 New York World's Fair had been unveiled. The fair became a goal line for the park. The team believed that the World's Fair would draw massive crowds into New York City, and these crowds would likely spend a day at Freedomland. This belief even influenced Freedomland's advertising, with promotion for the park rolled out nationwide to familiarize the country with Freedomland before they traveled to the fair. Freedomland would miss its June 1st deadline, but would open a few weeks later, on June 19th, 1960. As with Disneyland, Freedomland's debut would be chaotic. The park's pavement was one of the last things to be finished, in a similar situation to Disneyland. At Disney's park, the heels of women's shoes sunk into the asphalt. Freedomland's situation was slightly worse, as the land beneath the park was swampland, with some sections of it having been used as a landfill. By some accounts, this led to springs from old mattresses poking their way up through the pavement and tripping visitors. Also in a parallel to Disneyland, opening day was hot,
they built
the water
over a
fountains weren't
landfill?
operational, and many of the attractions
What were they
roped off.
thinking?
Wood, who had been blamed for Disneyland's botched opening, was looking more like a common denominator rather than an innocent bystander. However, opening day did successfully draw over 60,000 people into Freedomland. New York Mayor Robert Wagner would declare June 19th Freedomland Day.
Yep, here comes the 4th Cavalry stage, right on time. Now this may be Indian territory, and it may look like the Old West, but the time is today, and the place is Freedomland, a big entertainment park in the Bronx.
Time is today.
Just half an hour by subway from Times Square in New York City.
Guests would enter Freedomland as millions had, through New York. The first theme section, named Little Old New York, was the city in the mid to late 19th century. Old New York was similar to Main Street USA in that it mainly consisted of era-specific shops and modes of transportation. The most advertised of all of the stores was certainly the replica of the first New York Macy's, which sold toys, hats, and other souvenirs. The main attraction of the land was the horseless carriage, an antique cars ride through a mock New England countryside. Aero Development, the company which had contributed many attractions to Disneyland, was responsible for the antique cars as well as numerous other Freedomland rides. As with Disneyland, Wood recruited sponsors for many of Freedomland's restaurants, shops, and attractions, packing in even more companies than he had with Disneyland. Freedomland also featured costumed actors portraying citizens of the time periods. In Little Old New York, a suffragette and a police officer would perform and interact with visitors. After the New York section was Old Chicago. Unlike the broad time period of Freedomland's New York area, Old Chicago was set at a very specific date and time. In October of 1871, the Great Chicago Fire killed around 300 people and did unfathomable damage to the city. After the fire, a reporter for the Chicago Republican newspaper claimed that the fire was started in the barn of Irish immigrant Catherine O'Leary while she was milking her cow. He claimed that the cow kicked over a lantern, which started the fire, a story that was soon published throughout the country, being accepted far and wide as the reason for the destruction, fueled by anti-poverty, anti-Irish, and anti-Catholic sentiments. 40 years later,
That poor
the reporter
woman
admitted that he and two of his co-workers had made the story up. It's up for debate which is more embarrassing, that these people would ruin the reputation and life of an innocent woman to sell a few papers, or that it took 3 people to fabricate a story in which a cow kicks over a lantern. No matter, O'Leary, who reportedly, quote, died heartbroken in 1895, and the cow, who died likely oblivious at an unreported date, were cleared of all guilt. But that did not stop Freedomland USA, a park
Poor
boasted
woman.
as, quote, authentic in every detail, for continuing to point the finger at O'Leary. In fact, visitors to Freedomland could literally point at O'Leary and her cow, as they were featured in the Old Chicago area as walk-around characters. The Chicago Fire itself was also recreated. The brochure stated, quote,
Why?
The Great Chicago Fire was a disaster. Today, it's spectacular entertainment.
Fire! Look at that!
What is with theme
Once every
parks
20
making
minutes, a controlled fire was
attractions
started
out
on a
of
group of buildings,
disasters?
And a hand-pumped fire engine was rolled out. Children were encouraged to help pump the water to put out the flames. Also in Old Chicago was the Great Lakes, a man-made waterway in which a sternwheeler and a tugboat took guests on a scenic tour, with bands on board to lead them in song. There was also a station for the park's railroad, the Santa Fe Railroad, based on the real-life railway that Wood's father had worked on. After Old Chicago was the Great Plains, set between 1803 and 1900. This area featured Fort Calvary, a log stockade straight from the, quote, Indian fightin' days. Inside, guests could learn to square dance and lasso, while also seeing bandits get caught, charged, and even attend their funeral after they were hung. An Indian village originally located in Old Chicago was eventually moved to this area as well. The major attraction of the land was the stagecoach, which gave guests a tour of the plains and even crossed a river. After the Great Plains was San Francisco, also set in a specific year, 1906, the year of the Great Earthquake. In another disaster-turned-spectacle, the main attraction of the area would be Earthquake, a dark ride that took guests through the streets of San Francisco during the earthquake that killed over 3,000 people. Buildings crumbled, houses slid, and fires broke out as the dark ride progressed. San Francisco also had a stop for the Santa Fe Railroad. The other main attraction of the area was the Northwest Fur Trapper, Freedomland's Jungle Cruise equivalent, which took guests on a fur trapping journey along the Pacific Northwest, where they would have to avoid collapsing bridges, cougar attacks, and, quote, an ambush by totem pole Indians. By this point in the guest's Freedomland journey, some might have noticed a slight bias in the park's storytelling. While the Indian village would feature members of the Penobscot tribe as actors, the Northwest Fur Trapper ride, Fort Cavalry, and the stagecoach ride would refer to or depict indigenous people as aggressors, while depicting the pioneers as rugged heroes. This Western aesthetic was popularized decades prior by Buffalo Bill Cody's Wild West show, and Freedomland would feature an actress portraying Annie Oakley, Buffalo Bill's famous sharpshooter. Freedomland marketed itself as edutainment, but in reality, its focus was unbridled patriotism, far more than even Disneyland presented. Freedomland was the bedroom where Uncle Sam and Lady Liberty made Yankee Doodle Dandy. It was the idea of USA brought to life. Nowhere was this more evident than in the park's mascot, the fictional Johnny Freedom, said to be a, quote, representative of the American spirit of hard work and ingenuity.
What if smartphones were more than just smart? The all-new Google Pixel 6, with a 24-hour adaptive battery that's...
Shut up, Google.
After San Francisco was the Old Southwest, set in 1890, combining three southwestern towns, Tucson, Tombstone, and Santa Fe,
After this,
into
I'm
one
probably
themed area.
gonna go lie down.
Attractions
I'm feeling
included
kind
the
of
Tucson
tired.
Mining Company Sky Ride, Casa Loca, a tilted house, mine caverns, a two-story dark ride taking guests on a journey through an old mine, and the Santa Fe Opera House and
Mine.
Saloon, which played Western stage shows. When the Santa Fe Railroad passed through the Old Southwest, bandits would often hold up the train. Guests could also send themselves a letter while in the Great Plains that a Pony Express rider would deliver to a post office in the Old Southwest. After the Old Southwest was New Orleans, where every day was Mardi Gras. New Orleans featured multiple dark rides, including Buccaneers, a dark ride that took guests in a ride car dressed like a pirate ship through multiple scenes of pirates and even an encounter with a sea serpent. It is suspected that one of Marco Engineering's former Disneyland employees was made aware of Walt's concept for a pirate walkthrough attraction. It is theorized that the success of Buccaneers influenced the decision to change Disneyland's walkthrough Pirate Wax Museum into a dark ride. Another natural disaster dark ride, named Tornado, took guests on a car ride during a violent twister, viewing it destroy a family farm. Civil War took guests on wagons through a recreation of famous war scenes, using primitive animated figures.
What is with dark rides and making? What is with theme parks and making rides out of natural disasters?
Off of the centennial of the Civil War, which would be celebrated from 1961 to 1965. New Orleans also featured an Aero Development Danny the Dragon ride, as well as the King Rex Carousel. The area was often referred to as Freedomland's Fantasyland equivalent. The seventh and final land of Freedomland was Satellite City, labeled as the future. The brochure stated, quote, Freedomland has taken you on a tour of America's past. In Satellite City, you can step right into its future. This space-age land was geographically located in Freedomlands, Florida, and many of the attractions were tied to the rocket launch site at Cape Canaveral. Attractions included the blast-off bunker, an educational walkthrough of a Cape Canaveral control room with a simulated launch sequence, a moving sidewalk, and the Satellite City Turnpike, a sports car kiddie ride showcasing the future of highways. similar to Disneyland's Autopia. Satellite City's most striking attraction was the Braniff Space Rover, a flight simulator that was a combination of Disneyland's Rocket to the Moon and Circarama attractions, giving guests views from above Earth, specifically of South America and the United States. The show building resembled an enormous UFO, straight from the movies of the day. The park also had its own soundtrack, with original arrangements and songs for each land. Freedom Land, with its 7 themed areas and over 40 attractions, was impressive. While it clearly followed the Disneyland model, there were plenty of unique and innovative experiences that set Freedom Land apart. The major difference in its scale was Wood's attention to detail. He brought the philosophy he had while at Disneyland with him to Freedom Land. He believed that park guests focused on the big picture and not the tiny details. So while Freedom Land was bigger than Disneyland, it lacked the depth that came from Walt's perfectionist nature and the talent of his artists. But Wood might not have been completely wrong, as many visitors who had visited both parks believed Freedom Land was just as good, if not better, than Disneyland. Freedom Land seemed well positioned to be a success. It had plenty of attractions, space, and promotion, but there was one major problem that the park would face. It would have to operate seasonally. Due to New York's climate and leisure habits, it was decided to operate Freedom Land from June to October every year. This meant that in order to break even, Freedom Land would need to attract 2 million visitors in its first season, although the team was aiming for 4.5 million. This was going to be difficult. Many, including Walt Disney himself, were not sure that East Coast audiences would be as receptive to Disneyland-type parks as the West Coast had been. It was a gamble, perhaps Wood's greatest yet, but if it were to fail, the main burden would fall to his investors. For now, though, Freedom Land's future was bright. A few widely published incidents would occur in the first few months of operation. Just after opening, one of the stagecoaches overturned when the horses were spooked by the train's whistle. 10 people, including 3 children, were injured. 2 were hospitalized. On August 27th, one more robbery than planned was performed at the park, when 3 men held up the cash control center for real. They were shortly identified after one of the robbers read in the paper that they had stole a total of $28,000, when he had only received $5,000. After doing the math, he was so angry that he turned himself and the 2 others into the police. In the last few weeks of Freedom Land's first season, reports began to emerge.
Imagine being so petty that you're just like, wait a minute.
Apparently, even before the park opened, Wood & Company had run out of money, offering Webb and Knapp to dock in the park rather than paying their rent, which Zeckendorf agreed to. The financial issues continued as the construction costs rose, and some major investors pulled out. To supplement this, Zeckendorf increased his share. Soon, Zeckendorf was a controlling shareholder, owning 40% in IRC. Zeckendorf stepped in and began operating the park, pushing out many of Wood's men, including Fred Schumacher. In the final weeks before Freedom Land closed for the season, the operating schedule was changed to weekends only, leaving many weekday guests confused when they arrived at the closed park. For a quarter, they were invited to tour the non-operating grounds. October 30th, 1960 would be the final day of Freedom Land's first operating season.
I'll give you a tour if you give me a quarter.
1.5 million visitors, missing the necessary amount by 500,000 and falling far short of their goal for 4.5 million. By this point, Wood and Marco had moved on to their next project, a new park named Six Flags Over Texas to open in Arlington the following year. This left Zeckendorf with the keys to a failing park atop his lucrative land. The only way out that he could see was to invest more into the project. 2 live entertainment venues were added, the Hollywood Arena in the San Francisco section, and the Moon Bowl in Satellite City. However, the financial issues continued to pile up. Zeckendorf was already having a difficult time keeping a hold of
Bro, it's not worth it.
And Freedom Land
just old yeller it.
Still, he hoped to turn it around. With the World's Fair just 3 seasons away, perhaps the park could turn a profit yet. Zeckendorf tried every trick that he knew, including restructuring assets between his companies to flow as much cash into Freedom Land as possible. Ambitious plans for a Freedom Land Inn were scrapped, and cheap amusements were added in an attempt to make a few quick bucks. Nothing seemed to work, and the park continued to lose money. After the 1962 season, the Tornado Dark Ride was sold to Kennywood in Pennsylvania, and other rides were put up for sale. Webb and Knapp began to auction the unused land surrounding Freedom Land as Zeckendorf's empire continued to crumble. Zeckendorf tried to extend Freedom Land's operating season, opening in late April for the 1963 season and even considering putting on Christmas and winter activities. These would not come to fruition. On May 16, 1964, Freedom Land would open for its 5th season. As the opening approached, rumors circulated that Freedom Land might be sold and moved to Florida, although park officials stated that they were optimistic about their future in New York, especially since the World's Fair had opened the previous month. In July, it was reported that Zeckendorf and Webb and Knapp had relinquished their controlling stake in the National Development Company, which had managed the land under Freedom Land, as well as selling their shares in IRC. Both companies would go to Zeckendorf's long-term collaborator and president of the National Development Company, Hyman Green. Green was certain that with both the park and the land under his control, he would be able to save Freedomland, again citing the crowds coming to the New York World's Fair. However, his confidence was misplaced. On September 13, 1964, Freedomland closed its gates for the season. The next day, it filed for bankruptcy. The park was said to have been $27 million in debt. Hyman and Zeckendorf believed that they could sell a large portion of Freedomland, downsizing the theme park from its original 85 acres to a mere 30, but this never happened. Freedomland was closed forever. Most of the park's rides would be sold and relocated to other parks around the country, most notably Earthquake and Buccaneers, which would be moved to Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio, the latter being renamed to Pirate Ride. Zeckendorf would admit that Freedomland had been one of Webb and Knapp's biggest failures, coming at the worst possible time for the firm. His empire, which once had over $300 million in real estate, was no more, and Freedomland would forever be cited as one of the main reasons. There was one silver lining. The land under Freedomland was still valuable, and it would be sold to the United Housing Foundation, who on February 9, 1965, would announce their plans for the world's largest housing development, to be named Co-op City. The $300 million project would see high-rise residential buildings towering over the land on which Freedomland once stood. Co-op City still remains today, and a portion of the land is still technically zoned for amusement operations.
Cool.
Left many wondering what happened. How did a park so grand fail so fast? The most glaring factors were the park's high construction costs and its seasonal operation schedule, both of which limited the park's success before opening day. However, this does not explain why Freedomland missed its attendance projections. These might have been inflated to begin with, but many speculate that Freedomland's model was already outdated by the time that it opened. The park might have been a better, bigger Disneyland, but it was a better version of the original 1955 Disneyland. By 1959, Disneyland had added 3 groundbreaking signature attractions, and amusement parks around the country began to add large thrill rides, of which Freedomland had none, which could have hurt the park's popularity. The most compelling theory to the park's demise comes from Freedomland historian and author Michael Vergentino. Vergentino tracks a series of evidence that suggests that Co-op City was planned for the park's real estate for some time, possibly even before the park was built. In a 1970 newspaper article, Zeckendorf claimed that, quote, Freedomland was a device to hold the land, and that was sound, suggesting that the park was always meant to be temporary. There remains many uncertainties, partly because Zeckendorf himself has given contradictory accounts of his involvement with the park. But there is evidence that suggests that at some point in Freedomland's lifespan, possibly even from its inception, Co-op City was planned. And if this is the case, then more than just Zeckendorf would be at fault for Freedomland's failure. A part of the blame would fall on city planner Robert Moses, who helped aid Co-op City's development as part of his housing renewal strategy for the city. The construction of Co-op City was reported to be the fulfillment of a Moses dream. Perhaps if the park had proved more profitable in its first few seasons, it could have lasted longer, but in the end, the world's largest entertainment center would last a mere 5 seasons. However, that was all the time that it needed to make a lasting impression on its guests, many of which fondly remember their trip to the country's past through the lens of Freedomland USA. By this point in the late 60s, C.V. Wood was off on other ambitious projects, continuing to play the same game he always had, finding success in the most unlikely of places, in everything from chili cook-offs to African diamond mines. In 1968, he was somehow able to convince the city of London to allow him to purchase the famous London Bridge, dismantle it, and move it to Arizona, a gamble that only Woody could see through. Supposedly, Woody never felt that Freedomland was fully finished, and believed that the financial troubles early on kept it from becoming the park that he had originally envisioned. While many of Wood's business associates, such as Van France, would return to work at Disneyland, Walt and Woody never reconciled their differences. After his departure from Disneyland, their distaste for one another only grew. During the construction of Freedomland, Wood was billing himself as the master builder of Disneyland, implying to his investors that he had played a part in designing Walt's park. Walt soon learned of this and would take Wood to court over the matter, asking that he stop implying that he had a hand in designing the park. Wood would stop promoting himself as the master builder of Disneyland, at least publicly, as a result of the suit. It is rumored that this also led to Wood exiting the amusement park industry after consulting on Six Flags Over Texas. Allegedly, Walt even had a hand in the failure of Freedomland. After filing for bankruptcy, Freedomland would cite one key reason for its failure. It would not blame the expensive construction, seasonal operation schedule, or even the lack of thrill rides for its demise. It would instead blame the 1964 New York World's Fair. The very fair that the
course it
Freeland
would.
team hoped would save the park quickly became the go-to excuse for its inability to attract crowds in its final operating season. The official reason was the fair that had been built by New York's infamous master builder, Robert Moses, and that had been populated with groundbreaking attractions by Walt Disney.
Donk. Okay. I think I'm gonna end it there because I'm so tired. I don't know what happened. I just got a wave of just like, I need to sleep. Hi. So, in the meantime, let's find someone to raid, shall we? Actually, first let me take that off. This piece is coming along nicely, I think. You have to switch up some of the colors, but overall, I think it's pretty good. There we go. Let's see who's online. Oh, Zai's online. Okay, so we're going to go. Ah, my ass. We're going to go raid my good friend Zai. Again. I have no raid message, but if you want to stick around for the raid, so that you get extra points for more redeems later on in the future, thank you for sticking around with me and watching me mess around with art again. hopefully in the next few days I will have something different. I want to play more single player games. And that is definitely going to happen. I just need to get a new capture card. But other than that, thank you for coming, and I will see you next time. Goodbye!